Chapter 403. After flying at high speed for a while, the helicopter carrying Mr. O finally approached the edge of the dark clouds that covered a large part of the sea. At this time, the pilot of the helicopter began to breathe a sigh of relief. Based on the results displayed on the helicopter's airborne radar, they seem to have left the battle area. Report: we seem to have left the battle area. After confirming the current situation, the pilot immediately reported the situation to Mr. O. Okay, release. However, before Mr. O could give the next order, the helicopter was torn apart by a violent shock. During the violent shock, Mr. O grabbed onto the seat tightly. Relying on his own strength and the double protection of the seatbelt, Mr. O managed to protect himself from being thrown into the air during the shock. However, while holding onto the seat beside him tightly, Mr. O saw with his own eyes how his subordinates were thrown into the air by the shock. He also saw with his own eyes where the shock that swallowed the helicopter came from. It turned out that the tail of the helicopter had been blown off at some point. The helicopter, which had lost its rear propeller, could not control its attitude and balance at all. Therefore, there was only one ending for Mr. O. After an unknown amount of time, Mr. O woke up amidst the sound of waves crashing against the shore. The moment he regained consciousness, severe pain from all over his body suddenly rushed along Mr. O's nerves and rushed into his brain. It was like a tsunami hitting Mr. O's mind. Mr. O screamed uncontrollably, but there was nothing he could do to make the excruciating pain go away. The only thing he could do was to howl in pain like a weakling. However, a few minutes after the screams started, Mr. O realized something else. He was not dead. He actually managed to survive the sudden change of the world spinning around him. However, he did not know where he was now. Was he saved by someone? Or was he captured by someone? Was he captured by the submarine? However, it was better than being captured by aliens and used for experiments, right? Suddenly, the corners of Mr. O's mouth twitched self-deprecatingly. You're awake. Just as Mr. O was laughing at his own situation, a familiar voice sounded. Surprised, Mr. A.U. opened his eyes with all his might and looked in the direction of the sound. He actually saw a face that shocked him. It was a face covered by an unkempt beard, and more than half of the face was covered by stains. Even so, Mr. O could still tell the true appearance of the face from the pair of eyes and the rough outline of the face. Mr. A.U. opened his mouth, then suddenly smiled. So you didn't die. Qian Shanwu. That's right. After seeing the face and confirming its owner, Mr. O could not help but let out a sigh of relief. It turned out that the person who saved him was not someone else, but Qian Shanwu, the substitute that he thought had been killed when hunting the diving ship. My lord, I found you on the beach. What the hell is going on? Qian Shanwu's attitude was still the same. He maintained his usual humble attitude in front of Mr. O, and he did not have any strange thoughts when he saw Mr. O's current miserable state. Mr. O was certain of this. This was because Qian Shanwu, the substitute, was personally trained by Mr. O a long time ago. Mr. O was certain of his loyalty. I lost. Mr. O was silent for a moment. Then he told his stand-in what had happened to him. You lost? How could that be? My lord, you're so powerful. How could you lose? After Mr. O admitted that he had failed, Qian Shanwu suffered an even greater blow than Mr. O. You lost, so be it. There's nothing to be sad about. Mr. O waved his hand and changed the topic. Right, Qian Shanwu. How long have you been here? Have you contacted the outside? Mr. O's question stunned Qian Shanwu slightly, but Qian Shanwu just shook his head. I don't know how long it's been. I only know that after the battle, I was pushed to this uninhabited island by the sea and have been here until today. Although I tried to contact the outside world in the past, I've failed. My lord, you're the second human besides me to land on this uninhabited island. Is that so? Mr. O wanted to say something, but he was unexpectedly swallowed by an irresistible tiredness. His head tilted, and he fell into a deep sleep. Mr. O, who had fainted, did not notice the pair of sharp eyes under the dirty face. After an unknown amount of time, Qian Shanwu, who was quietly watching Mr. O, suddenly heard a cold voice in his ear. Qian Shanwu, your answer. Qian Shanwu clenched his hands tightly, then slowly loosened them. Answer? Was it the answer of betrayal? Or was it the answer of swearing allegiance? Perhaps, when the mithril soldiers sent him to the floating battleship, all the answers had already appeared in front of Qian Shanwu's eyes. However, just like Mr. O's trust in Qian Shanwu also had indescribable feelings and gratitude for the substitute that Mr. O had spent many years to forge. If it weren't for Mr. O's appreciation, Qian Shanwu would probably just be an ordinary social animal in the end. It was just that, on the floating battleship, Qian Shanwu once again saw the young man, Ray Minkai, who was originally just the adjutant of the Mithril Witch. Ray Minkai, who was wearing a military uniform that Qian Shanwu had never seen before and was surrounded by many elite soldiers, captured Qian Shanwu's attention as soon as he opened his mouth. Dear Mr. Substitute, have you ever considered becoming the real Mr. O one day? The man, who claimed to be the knight captain of the Knight Regiment under Her Majesty's command, was so straightforward that Qian Shanwu couldn't refuse. Thus, under Ray Minkai's operation, the helicopter carrying Mr. O was shot down by Fianna, who had been lying in ambush outside. Then, everything happened naturally. Qian Shanwu's right hand unconsciously fumbled in a broken bag next to him. This was found on Mr. O's body after he rescued him. Qian Shanwu knew that this was the bag that Mr. O had always carried with him. In this bag, most of Mr. O's secrets were placed. As long as he took possession of the things in this bag, it meant that he would control most of Mr. O's power. Moreover, if he added his own face and operated it properly, Qian Shanwu was confident that he could control at least 60% of Mr. O's power. His right hand, that was fumbling in the broken bag, gradually retracted. Then, under Qian Shanwu's unconscious control, his hands touched his face, touching the face that was occupied by the beard. Then, with a sudden force of both hands, he tore off all the beard that occupied the face. Amidst the pain of skin tearing and flesh tearing, Qian Shanwu's will became extremely clear and firm. He had decided, from this moment on, he would no longer be a substitute. He would be the real Mr. O, the executive officer of Amalgam, Mr. O. Amidst the blood dripping from the wound, Qian Shanwu said in a hoarse voice, "Everything is for Her Majesty Euphemia." However, this oath of loyalty was refuted by the cold voice. "No, Qian Shanwu, our loyalty is not to Her Majesty Euphemia, but to Sir Ray Minkai." Ray Mink. Qian Shanwu was stunned, then laughed loudly. "Ha ha ha! I see. Qian Shanwu, who suddenly understood what was going on, pulled out a pistol from his waist and stared angrily at the unconscious Mr. O. "Everything is for the Supreme Sir Ray Minkai." Bang, bang, bang. Under the sound of the gunshot, the ground was gradually dyed red, as well as the broken bag that was later torn open by Qian Shanwu. After taking the things inside, he threw it beside the corpse. From this moment on, the substitute Qian Shanwu was dead. What was left was Mr. O, who was loyal to Ray Minkai. The moment Qian Shanwu, the new Mr. O's figure disappeared from the uninhabited island, a terrible energy storm erupted in the depths of the island. Then in the dazzling light that covered the sky, the uninhabited island where the real Mr. O was buried was erased from the map. "Sir, that person has made his choice." The white light that soared into the sky was as dazzling as the rising sun. It also caused the fleet that was shrouded in dark clouds to notice this change. Under this dazzling white light, the corners of Ray Minkai's mouth curled up slightly. "Is that so? Then, did our Mr. O say anything?" The other side of the communication channel was silent for a moment. Then, Fianna's voice slowly sounded. "Everything is for the Supreme Sir Ray Minkai." Ray Minkai's eyelids twitched. He never thought that Qian Shanwu would shout such a slogan at that moment. "Forget it. I'll let him go this time. Now it's time for me to finish up the work in front of me." Yes, it was a Hell Monarch team, with Gates piloting the Hell Monarch command model. This was the work that Ray Minkai needed to finish up. As for the other freighters, most of them had already been dealt with when the Raging Flame Demon Sword was hunting the barbarians. Compared to the nimble Hell King team, the large and bloated freighters were like large targets, allowing the raging flame demon sword to cut them down. In the instant when the white light tore through the sky, only the Hell King team, the freighter under Gates' Hell King team, and the freighter occupied by the raging flame demon sword were left on the battlefield. In the battlefield surrounded by a sea of fire, the captains and crew of the two freighters abandoned their ships one after another. They tried their best to increase the speed of the lifeboats to the maximum, frantically escaping from between the two freighters that were lucky enough to survive. They were afraid that if they delayed for even a second, they would be buried here. Attack! Under the white light, besides getting rid of all the barbarians and the other freighters, the silent raging flame demon sword didn't make Gates feel at ease. On the contrary, the moment the white light soared into the sky, an inexplicable sense of irritation tore Gates' emotions apart. It was as if he had lost something important from that moment on. Thus, in order to vent the irritation that drove Gates crazy, he didn't hesitate to give the order to attack. The sound of machine guns, cutting through the air, the whistling sound of blades and swords. In an instant, the raging flame demon sword was surrounded. Buzz, the whistling sound of bullets, the whistling sound of blades. The swords hadn't even reached the raging flame demon sword when the light that Gates was extremely familiar with appeared again. TCH, the Lambda Drive system? After I saw through your identity, you're using the Lambda Drive system more and more frequently? Even the cute little kitty is scared? The perverted blonde man looked at the screen that surrounded the raging flame demon sword and immediately began to attack with words. However, before he could finish his sentence, a gust of wind howled from the sky, forcing Gates' body, which was the King of Hell command type, to retreat. Boom! Under the sound of the wind, a huge water column soared into the sky and a freighter that was broken into two halves amidst the painful groans. Well, what's going on? Gates' instinctive reaction made his plane jump high from the freighter at the critical moment, narrowly avoiding the terrifying sound of the wind. But now, the only foothold he had was shattered and quickly sank into the rolling waves. Roar! Immediately after, a huge roar like that of a prehistoric beast broke through the water column and rushed into Gates' ears. Who are you calling a little kitty? The thunderous sound continuously attacked Gates' ears. At the same time, a ferocious face appeared under the splashes of water that filled the sky. Cold golden pupils, a huge steel lion head, sharp and terrifying teeth, and a body that was even bigger than the Hell King. Its appearance immediately attracted most of the attention of the Hell King team that was besieging the raging flame demon sword. Lion, lion, how is this possible? How can there be such a huge lion in this world? Clang! A cold light flashed. The steel lion and the water column rushed to the position of the Hell King team and instantly tore one of the Hell King team to shreds. You're late. State 0. It turned out that the steel lion that suddenly appeared was the long-toothed lion that had just killed the Vanguard team. No, you came just in time. Kai, that red guy is yours. The rest of the small fries are mine. Be careful of the Lambda Drive system. Lei Minkai warned. Stepping on the ground with his raging flames devil sword, he turned into a sharp arrow and shot towards the Red Hell King. Wong, with the long sword in hand, the raging flame demon sword in his right hand waved, and with a heavy blow, the Red Hell King team was forced to retreat. How is this possible? The power of the Lambda Drive system is actually unable to stop the power of this body. It's just a big guy that a little stronger than the Hell King team. How can it have such power? Gates was stunned. He couldn't believe that as the commander of the Amalgam Death Squad, he would be suppressed by the enemy in a single move. Humph. Can't believe the current situation. Ray Minkai was well aware of Gates' reaction. Gates, who had always relied on the super high performance of the Hell King team and the Lambda Drive system to oppress noobs, would always act like a drowning dog when encountering a tough bone. Although it was pitiful, although it made people feel carefree, but today it was definitely Gates' end. Die. Gates. On the road to the underworld, pass a message to Mr. AU. I'll take his amalgam. Chapter 404. Looking from the desolate space, there was a huge spot on the blue planet below that was slowly rotating with flashes of lightning flashing from time to time. This was a typhoon that suddenly appeared over the ocean a few hours ago. No one knew how it appeared, nor did they know why it appeared. After the human satellites discovered this spot that seemed to be the incarnation of a storm, they immediately launched an emergency plan. However, this was also the same as what was mentioned above. No matter how outstanding the contributions of meteorological science were in the field of weather research, they could not analyze the source of this storm from the data at hand. It was as if this storm suddenly appeared out of thin air in a place that humans could not see. However, while many weather scientists were worried about this, the eyes that had been staring at the sudden appearance of the stripe for a long time gradually closed. Sabina, how long has it been? After raising his hand to turn off the real-time satellite transmission in front of him, Reynolds slowly stood up from his chair. Yes, it has been 4 hours since the storm appeared. The female assistant who was waiting by the side responded respectfully. 4 hours? It seems that the results are out. Has Fowler sent back any news? Reynolds turned to look at the horizon in the distance. Unlike the previous live broadcast, the seaside where Reynolds was located was peaceful and sunny at the moment, which was completely different from the turbulent, stormy sea. We haven't received any news yet. However, according to the original plan, Lee Fowler should have completed the evacuation. After Sabina pondered the details of the previous plan, she gave an answer that she could think of. Is that so? However, even if something went wrong with Fowler's ability, there shouldn't be any major problems. What's more, the opponent's target is not here. Reynolds' gaze seemed to cross the ocean in front of him and see through the truth hidden inside the storm that suddenly appeared. Sabina did not respond, because she did not know why Reynolds did this from the beginning. She only needed to know that Reynolds did the right thing. This was Sabina's usual style. Reynolds, who was used to Sabina's unconditional trust, just smiled lightly and said casually, "Sabina, while confirming Fowler's condition, we have to start moving. Otherwise, the treasure left by that master will be taken away by others." "Yes, Sir Reynolds, I'll make the arrangements now." It had been 4 hours since the storm appeared. No matter how intense the battle was, it was likely that it had already reached its end. Then, behind this battle, Reynolds still had something to do. It was the same for his opponent. Time is a race against time. Not long ago, when the white light soared into the sky and illuminated the entire sea area that was covered by darkness, Lee Foulet, who was leading the elite squad that Reynolds had assigned to him, also noticed the white light that seemed to pierce through the sky. That was a nuclear explosion? Lee Foulet, who had some understanding of the strongest weapon in human history, pushed up his glasses and looked coldly in the direction of the white light. However, at this moment, Lee Foulet did not dare to make a judgment. The existence of such weapons was undoubtedly a weapon of mass destruction that maintained the balance of the world. He believed that the other countries would not recklessly use such a weapon of mass destruction. Then, is it time to evacuate? Lee Foulet withdrew his gaze and focused his attention on the churning sea in front of him. According to the data detected by the previous sonar, Lee Foulet's target this time was probably not far ahead. However, the moment the white light broke through the sky, Lee Foulet felt that there was no need to carry out this so-called mission anymore. "Sir Reynolds, did you expect things to develop to this point?" With both hands on the railing, Lee Foulet's eyes showed a faint struggle, but it was immediately drowned out by determination. "Inform everyone. Let's withdraw." The white light on the horizon gradually faded, and Lee Foulet did not hesitate to issue the order to withdraw. Moreover, after the cargo ship turned and left, Lee Foulet's gaze once again fell in the direction of the white light. "Goodbye, dear Mr. O," he said. The movement caused by the 10,000-ton cargo ship breaking through the churning sea was clearly captured by the son of Dan's slave lurking in the depths of the sea. "Report. The target has begun to withdraw. Please advise." As soon as she heard the news, Teresa suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. "Captain, should we pursue?" Richard, who was always by Teresa's side, bent down slightly, and asked softly, "No, we won't pursue. Son of Dan Slave, starboard rudder 3, rendezvous with Avalon." After Teresa shook her head slightly and made the latest order, she looked up at Richard. "Richard, it seems that we won this round." "Yes, Captain." Although in the end, the cargo ship saw the opportunity and turned to escape. But from the feedback from Avalon, it is indeed our victory. Richard nodded and showed a rare smile. However, behind this victory, the role played by the son of Dan Slave was only to act as bait to attract the enemy's special forces. The main battlefield still needed Avalon to make a move. In addition, at the same time that the enemy decided to retreat, the two Lionheart Knight would probably also return. A slightly complicated light appeared in Richard's eyes. He never thought that Ray Minkai would have such great courage to send a pair of Gemini pilots who claimed to kill him to attack. Was he not afraid that the Gemini, who were raised by the Nine Dragons, would betray him? These thoughts kept popping up in Richard's mind, but they were then stifled by Richard. After all, after the Gemini were handed over to Avalon by Mithril and Ray Minkai, they no longer had anything to do with him. "Cough. Captain, we may have to prepare a report for the operations headquarters. In addition, it should be time to find that person." After calming himself down, Richard reminded Teresa of the things she had to do after this victory was a free win for the son of Dan Slave. Teresa was stunned, and then her expression became a little gloomy. "Yes, it's just that I don't know how to mention this to Uncle." Due to the influence of Ray Minkai's previous so-called intelligence, Teresa and the others already knew that there must be one or more spies in the operations headquarters. Although I don't think the general is that kind of person, Captain, perhaps you can choose a more tactful way to remind the general. Richard also had a headache about this matter. No matter which country, when discovering the existence of spies in their own ranks, most would show similar actions. "Yes," Teresa responded, but in the end, she didn't say anything. The moment the sharp blade pierced through the Red Hell King's torso, Crazy Gate's life also came to an end. Although this madman was the commander of the Death Squad, he was actually not as powerful as the Nine Dragons. In front of the Raging Flame Demon Sword, which was basically a fusion of the technology of the two worlds, Crazy Gate's Hell King was far less powerful than the Nine Dragons' Hell King. Lei Minkai only used the Lambda Drive system of the Raging Flame Demon Sword to stab through the Lambda Drive system of the Hell King's Lambda Drive system wall. He killed Mad Gates in front of his despairing eyes. On the other side, whether it was in size, mobility, strength, or even the Lambda Drive system's power, the Long Fong Lion State Zero perfectly crushed the Hell King's team. However, this big cat that was having fun didn't seem to be having enough fun. Even if the Hell King had lost all reaction and only had half of its body left, it would still be subconsciously fiddled with by this huge steel lion's claws. State Zero. Okay, the battle is over. After sheathing the Raging Flame Demon Sword, Ray Minkai shook his head slightly and looked at State Zero, who was still fiddling with the remains of the Hell King. Oh, what a trash. You can't even fight to your heart's content." After State Zero agreed, it turned around and jumped. After a few ups and downs, it changed from a huge steel lion to a cute little white cat. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared in midair. When it reappeared, it was already in the cockpit of the Raging Flame Demon Sword. Let's go back. The finishing work here can be left to the diving ship. After State Zero the white cat licked its claws, it lowered its head and laid on the handle of the pilot's seat, closing its eyes to rest. Although this battle was over, Ray Minkai knew that the real battle had just begun. Reynolds, this deeply hidden man might have already discovered the battle situation here. No, perhaps he had already discovered some clues from the beginning. Except for the Crazy Gates, Ray Minkai did not find any other Hell King with Reynolds' mark in the battle. Did they run to Teresa's side? Next, the information sent by the son of Dan Slave proved Ray Minkai's speculation. A fleet decisively turned around and retreated before coming into contact with the son of Dan Slave. Such a strange action immediately made Ray Minkai subconsciously think that it was the troops sent by Reynold. Fianna, let Qian Shanwu know. Let our new Mr. Au see me. A few hours later, above the sea that was still engulfed by the sea of fire, Avalon quietly floated above the son of Dan's slave. At the same time, a helicopter rose from the deck of the son of Dan's slave and flew towards Avalon. Hey, what a pity. We trained for so long, but we didn't have many opportunities to fight. Standing on the deck, Cruz said with some frustration. Originally, he was the first to complete the control training of the Lambda Drive system and could kill in the next battle. But he encountered an enemy who could turn around and run away without hesitation. Such an enemy made Cruz feel as if he was a boxer who had used all his strength to blast out a blow. But he had hit soft cotton and was helpless to return without any success. You should be content. We're just spectators in this battle. After Melissa slapped Cruz hard, she raised her head slightly and looked at Avalon above the son of Dan's slave. It's also thanks to our new friend. At least, it's better to be a spectator than a fight on the battlefield. Yes, definitely. At least, we haven't fully mastered the power of the Lambda Drive system. Even Cruz's Lambda Drive system can't be turned on any time and anywhere. Not to mention me and Sister Mao's Lambda Drive system. Compared to Cruz and Melissa's exclamation, Sosuke Xiangliang was much more direct. Under the guidance of Rei Mingkai, although Sosuke Xiangliang's control of the Lambda Drive system was much better than in the original work, it was still in a state where it didn't work at all. In this state, it was not a state where he could engage in high-intensity battles. That's true. Sosuke Xiangliang's words made Cruz and Melissa praise in unison. In the end, it's because our new friend is more reliable. Melissa shrugged and watched the helicopter carrying Teresa slowly fly into Naku in Avalon. Thank you for your hard work. Captain Teresa, I heard from the night about what happened. Thanks to you guys attracting some of the enemy's forces, otherwise we wouldn't have one so easily. Euphemia took the lead in concluding the battle as soon as she saw Teresa. No, we, the son of Dan's slave, can only do this much. Your Majesty. Teresa shook her head and modestly denied Euphemia's praise. Her eyes were also looking around for Rei Mingkai's figure. We all saw the actions of the son of Dan's slave. Captain Teresa, there's no need to be modest. Teresa's gaze did not escape Euphemia's eyes. Euphemia smiled gently and made an invitation. Captain Teresa, the knight is now arranging something. Why don't we wait there for a while? How about it? It's my pleasure. Your Majesty. Then, where was Rei Mingkai, who was supposed to greet Teresa with Euphemia? In a secret communication room in Avalon, Rei Mingkai was talking with a translucent figure. It was a holographic projection device connected to the Mithril's secret communication channel. The person using this holographic projection device was Mallory, who was far away on the other side of the ocean. Sir, it seems that your plan has succeeded. Through the light emitted by the holographic projection, Mallory looked into Rei Mingkai's eyes. Thanks to your excellency, my plan has already reached the most crucial stage. At this time, it's time for you to make a move. Mallory. It was rare for Rei Mingkai to address Mallory as a form of address used by nobles in the Empire. The appearance of this form of address also made Mallory's expression change slightly. Is that so? Then what can I do? Sir Knight, cooperate with our new Mr. O to liquidate and control the forces of the former Mr. O. In addition, we must move quickly. Otherwise, I'm afraid that Leonard will be one step ahead. Chapter 405. Deep in the mountains and forests, there are few people. However, in this remote mountain forest, there is an unknown research institute hidden in the depths of the forest. And on a dark and windy night, this unknown research institute finally attracted covetous eyes. Target found. 300 meters to the left, 2 people under a tree. 1 person on a mountain slope to the right. 5 people at the central gate. In the dim thicket, there were blurry figures moving. Let's start according to the plan. A cold voice sounded in the communication channel. It was Xia Yufan's voice. After the naval battle, Gemini was sent by Ray Minkai to assist Qian Shanwu, the new Mr. AU, to seize the legacy left behind by the previous Mr. AU. Now, after collecting most of the legacy of the previous Mr. AU, Gemini and the others finally arrive at the periphery of the research institute, hidden in the mountains by the previous Mr. AU. Xia Yulan's hands tightly grasp the long sword hanging at her waist, her eyes always looking in one direction. That was the direction where Qian Shanwu was. According to the original plan, the new Mr. AU would knock on the door of the research institute as Mr. AU, then open a passage for the troops led by Gemini to rush in and seize control of the entire research facility as quickly as possible. Gemini and Qian Shanwu had used this method many times on their way here. Because Qian Shanwu used to play the role of a substitute, most of the amalgam members did not know that there were two Mr. AU, so the operation was very smooth. Qian Shanwu sat in the car that was moving up and down a mountain road. He was playing with a lighter with a gorgeous pattern in his hand. He remembered that this was an item that the previous Mr. AU cherished very much in his early years. Although he did not know why Mr. AU, who controlled the entire underground world of Sakura, cherished this thing that looked expensive but was nothing to Mr. AU, it did not prevent him from remembering this lighter in his heart when he was still Qian Shanwu. Until now, after successfully getting rid of the label of a substitute and showing up as the real Mr. AU, he finally found this lighter in the villa where the previous Mr. AU lived all year round. He kept it by his side and played with it from time to time until they arrived at the entrance of the research institute in the mountains. Mr. AU, now I have seized most of your legacy. You can walk on the road to hell with peace of mind. The car stopped in the midst of the sound of gravel being crushed by the tires. Stop. Show your identification. In front of the research institute's gate, the guards on duty shouted loudly and raised the guns in their hands. Stop what you're doing. Mr. AU is in the car. When the guard sitting in the passenger seat saw the guard's action, he immediately opened the door, indicating that he did not mean any harm, and pulled out the name Mr. AU. Sure enough, as soon as they heard Mr. AU's name, the guards who raised their guns to stop the car from moving forward immediately wavered. Mr. AU? After hesitating for a moment, the guards suddenly raised their guns and pointed at the guards. One of them even pointed his gun at the car. They looked agitated and shouted loudly. Who is it? Come out. Everyone in the car, come out now. Otherwise, I will send all of you to hell. Stop. I don't recognize him either. As the car door opened, a familiar face to the guards appeared. Mr. AU? How is this possible? Obviously, these guards seemed to know something. For example, the previous Mr. AU had been killed. On this point, the guard were instantly shaken when they saw Qian Shanwu's face. Do it. The moment the guards were shaken, Xia Yufang, who was hiding in the woods, made a prompt decision and decisively issued an attack order. Puff! Several soft sounds swept through the pitch-black forest and tore apart the silence. The guards who had pointed their guns at the car fell to the ground in response. Qian Shanwu was not surprised. He just calmly glanced at the figures in jungle camouflage rushing out of the woods next to him and began to deal with the follow-up matters. He then turned around and sat back in the car, waiting for Gemini's next order. Not long after, the guard who sat back in the passenger seat handed a communication headset to Qian Shanwu. Mr. O, we can move on. However, I suggest that we still follow Plan B. Judging from the guard's reaction, this research institute seems to have known that the previous Mr. AU has died. Xia Yufang's voice came from the communication headset, and, at the same time, she brought news that made Qian Shanwu's expression freeze. Yes, it had been some time since the battle at sea. No matter how isolated this research institute was from the world, they should have noticed some news by now. What's more, before coming here, although Gemini and Qian Shanwu did not make much noise along the way, it was still possible that some people with ulterior motives might have seen through them. For example, Leonard, whom Mithril had paid close attention to. Leonard's actions were fast. When Gemini and Qian Shanwu began to act according to Ray Mingkai's orders, Leonard had already begun to encircle and seize Mr. AU's forces. If it were not for Qian Shanwu's face, which was similar to the previous Mr. Ayus, and some secret communication methods that he had seen during his time as a substitute. Gemini and Qian Shanwu's progress would have been far behind Reynolds. Even so, Leonard's speed was still fast enough. Not only did he seize a part of the former Mr. Ayu's forces, but he also encircled and occupied the forces of other executives who were on the same side as Mr. Ayu. For this reason, Mithril also sent a considerable number of troops to fight with Leonard against the property and sphere of influence of other amalgam executives. Of course, this was also a digression. Right now, the most important thing was to seize the secret research institute in front of them as quickly as possible. Qian Shanwu, who was holding the communication headset, did not hesitate, nor did he think of any effective methods. He was very clear about his current position and what he should do. "I'll leave everything to you, Miss Xia Yufeng." After saying that, Qian Shanwu passed the communication headset to the guard. Then, he leaned back against the soft seat and closed his eyes to rest. He did not care about the flames that lit up everywhere in the next instant and the muffled sound of bullets entering the body. "Yulan, let's get started. Be careful not to hurt those researchers. But if they resist, there's no need to hold back." With Xia Yufeng's order, Plan B, which focused on a strong attack, was immediately launched. Xia Yulan, who acted as the vanguard, pulled out her two swords and rushed out of the woods. Under the cover of the other team members, she rushed into the research institute and began her waltz of slaughter. The night was quiet, but it was also terrifying. But with the rise of the sun, the chilling coldness quietly left, leaving only traces of smoke floating in the sky. Good morning, everyone. This is the morning news. First, I'll play an emergency bulletin. In recent days, there have been frequent natural gas explosions all over the country, causing at least hundreds of casualties. Now, the National Emergency Center will now launch an inspection of natural gas systems all over the country and send commissioners to carry out a safety demonstration for the use of natural gas. Please cooperate fully. Natural gas explosion? The people in this country are really good at bullshitting. Watching the news on TV, the white cat's golden pupils flashed a mocking smile. The so-called natural gas explosion was nothing more than the commotion caused by Leonard, Lei Mingkai, and Mithril during this period of time when they were fighting for the inheritance left behind by the previous Mr. Ayu. Although it provoked the National Emergency Center to take action compared to other countries, especially countries that were in hot areas all year round, the movement here was insignificant and not worth mentioning. This is something that can't be helped. We can't let them announce the existence of some people and say that war is actually only a step away from this peaceful country, right? If that's the case, I'm afraid this country will be in chaos. Accompanied by Rei Mingkai's voice, a trace of aroma that made the white cat restless also drifted into the white cat's nostrils. Oh, woo, that was the smell of steak. The white cat, who couldn't stand the aroma, jumped onto the table and looked fiercely at the plate of steak that Rei Mingkai had just put on the table. State 0. Wait a minute. You haven't cooked it yet. Rei Mingkai, who was getting used to the white cat's increasingly greedy behavior, reminded him without turning his head. The claws of the white cat that were reaching for the steak suddenly paused, and then a trace of struggle flashed in the depths of its golden pupils. But, hateful Roar. Suddenly, the white cat gritted its teeth and turned its head away abruptly, no longer looking at the plate of delicious steak. This damned fragment. As soon as the words came out, the white cat was speechless. Recovering the fragments was one of the missions of the white cat and Rei Mingkai. But with the recovery of the fragments, the white cat's body became more and more like an ordinary kitten, reacting to meat. Even if this cute kitten went crazy and could turn into a huge steel long-fanged lion to fight on the battlefield, it would still drool at the delicious steak. Fortunately, when the white cat was struggling with the steak, the plate of steak was picked up by a slender hand and placed in front of the white cat. State 0, are you hungry? Why don't you eat first? As the soft voice sounded, the line of defense in the white cat's heart instantly collapsed. Awoo! The will to resist the steak was instantly defeated, leaving only the instinct to pounce on the steak. Looking at the white cat that was wolfing down the steak, the owner of the slender hand, Euphemia, smiled slightly and then looked back at the kitchen. Kai, can I let State Zero eat first? Let eat first. Ray Minkai would not refuse Euphemia's request most of the time. Immediately after, Euphemia tugged at the dress that she had just changed into and walked to the kitchen door with light footsteps. She then looked at Lei Minkai, who was busy inside. Kai, do you think this dress is suitable for me? After flipping the steak in the pot, Ray Minkai heard the voice and looked over. He was stunned for a moment, then showed an appreciative smile. It suits you very well. UFFI. Now, the dress that Euphemia was wearing was the school uniform of Array Dai High School. This was from the communication between Euphemia and Mira. When she learned that Mira had studied in Array Dai High School for a period of time, and that there was another whisper in this high school, Euphemia's curiosity was aroused. Therefore, after discussing with Ray Minkai, Euphemia entered Array Dai High School as a transfer student for a period of time, just like Myra's enrollment. Of course, for Euphemia, the results of her studies were not important. What was important was that her purpose was to go for Chidori. She wanted to see the differences and similarities between the Whisperers. For this, Ray Minkai could only remain silent, because just looking at Chidori's photos, one would probably have beautiful fantasies about Chidori. For example, an amiable, elegant young lady and so on. But once they met, these fantasies would probably collapse. Kurlutz was one of the examples. Euphemia, who didn't know about this, was a little excited. While Amalgam and Mithril were busy fighting for the legacy left by the previous Mr. EU and subconsciously avoided conflict, Euphemia finally had the opportunity to see the Earth that was different from her own world. Okay, lunch is ready. UFFI, it's time to eat. Ray Minkai flipped his right hand, and the steak in the pot was fresh out of the oven. However, the lunchtime between the two didn't last long before it was interrupted by a hurried ringtone. It was an emergency communication from Gemini. Ray Minkai and Euphemia looked at each other and picked up the communication. It's me. What's the situation? Sir Night Chief. The Institute is under our control. However, we found something in the Institute's database. Xia Yufang's voice didn't fluctuate, but what she said attracted Ray Minkai's attention. Database? What did you find? Ray Minkai frowned and asked. Yes, it's some residual data about the design of the airframe. Judging from the situation of the database had been destroyed before we took control of the Institute. Now, the database that we have found is the result of asking the technicians stationed at the Research Institute to repair it. Airframe data. Ray Minkai was silent for a moment, then said, inform Royd and ask him to send someone over. Yes, understood. How's our Mr. O doing? No abnormalities. Now he's assisting us in calculating and gradually strengthening control of the Institute. That's good. Restore the deleted data as much as possible. Perhaps there is something we are looking for. Understood. If it really doesn't belong here, I'm afraid I'll have to let the knight know immediately. Royd shook his head and waved at Mira and the other technicians. He then turned around and walked to the Gemini, who was guarding the door. He rubbed his hands and tried his best to show a kind smile. That. I wonder which one of you is free to take me to Warehouse A2. Royd already knew about the existence of the Gemini. However, no matter who it was, the Gemini was cold and made Royd suffer a lot. If not for the fact that he was unfamiliar with this place, Royd would not have taken the initiative to provoke the twins who looked exactly the same, but were as cold as ice mountains. Yulon, why don't you take Dr. Royd with you? Leave it to me. In the end, under Royd's awkward smile, Xia Yufang slowly opened her mouth. Follow me. Dr. Royd. Xia Yulon nodded slightly. She did not care whether Royd would follow her or not, and directly walked out of the door. Hey, wait for me. Seeing this, Royd hurriedly followed him. If he had been any slower, he was afraid that Xia Yulon would have left him behind. After chasing for a while, Royd finally arrived at the mysterious warehouse A2 under Xia Yulon's lead. The thing you're looking for is here. After Xia Yulon gave a simple reminder. She opened the door to the warehouse. Rumble. Under the driving of the electric motor, the steel door that completely sealed warehouse too slowly opened with a rumbling sound. As the light from the gap in the door became brighter and brighter, Royd, who was standing outside, could gradually see the interior of warehouse 82 clearly. There were all kinds of Type Zeros and even the ASs inside the warehouse. Moreover, the moment the door was completely opened, the moment the sunlight on the warehouse's ceiling was released, Royd's eyes suddenly widened. The expression on his face gradually became incredulous. How could this kind of thing appear here? The shocked expression did not stay on Royd's face for long. Royd, who boasted that his nerves had extraordinary endurance, recovered from the short moment of shock. The first thing he did was to take out the communication device from his pocket and quickly and swiftly sent an emergency message to Avalon. Avalon, I have an unexpected discovery here. I need the night captain to come here and take a look. There's a transfer student in our school? What's going on? Early in the morning, there was a loud scream in the classroom of No Bundi High School's Year 2 Class 4. No one would have thought that after Sosuke Sajiyoshi, Lei Minkai, and Myra's appearances, this seemingly ordinary school would once again welcome a new transfer student. Although, other than Sosuke, Xiangliang, who often came to class, Rei Minkai and Mira only had the names of foreign teachers and transfer students hanging above their heads. The other students' memories of the two of them were only so. As usual, Chidori, who had arrived at the school under Sagayoshi Sosuke's tailing protection, was caught by his good friend Tokapan Kyoko before he could put down his school bag. He repeatedly complained about the news that shocked all the students in Class 4 the second year. A transfer student? What's the big deal? Is there going to be another problematic student like Sosuke, Xiangliang? Chidori, who was subconsciously complaining about the shock shown by Tokapan Kyoko and the other Year 2 Class 4 students, suddenly froze. Then he stiffly turned his head and looked at Sosuke Xiangliang, who was standing behind him with a blank face. Is there a problem with me? Student Chidori. Sosuke Xiangliang, who did not understand Chidori's actions at all, was rather puzzled. However, no one would have thought that the scene that Chidori was thinking of at this moment was an extremely international blockbuster battle scene. Ever since the kidnapping incident, Chidori had known Sosuke Xiangliang's true identity, as well as the true identities of Rei Minkai and Mira, the identity that Mithril had to declare in front of Chidori. Therefore, after understanding that these three people were not ordinary people, but big shots who often jumped back and forth on the edge of life and death, Chidori inadvertently heard the word transfer student and immediately associated this so-called transfer student with a big shot on Sosuke Xiangliang's side. Student Xiangliang, come here for a moment. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that his hypothesis was correct. He threw the book on his seat and forcefully dragged Sosuke Xiangliang out of the classroom, leaving behind Tokapan Kyoko, who only had time to take a photo of their backs. Bang! The small hand that should have been soft slapped the wall fiercely, and it made a sound that made Sosuke Xiangliang's heart stop beating. Listen, Sosuke Xiangliang, tell me everything you know. What's going on with that so-called transfer student? Don't say you don't know. Chidori's gaze was extremely fierce, as if as long as Sosuke Xiangliang dared to lie, he would give him a good look. Sosuke Xiangliang subconsciously swallowed his saliva, but his expression was one of hesitation. If he wanted to say that he knew what was going on with the so-called transfer student, he could be considered one of the insiders. However, before he came to school, he received an emergency communication from the son of the dance slave. Even though it had already been more than an hour since he received the emergency communication. However, Sosuke Xiangliang still heard Richard's unsmiling and oppressive roar from the vice captain. Sergeant Sosuke Xiangliang, you better listen to me. From now on, your mission is no longer as simple as protecting Chidori, but to become one of the members who protect the Honorable Empress. Yes, understood. Although he was somewhat puzzled, Sosuke Xiangliang still instinctively responded at that time. Little did he know that this had caused another disaster. It was a disaster that was severely criticized by Richard, the vice captain. Sosuke Xiangliang could no longer remember Richard's words when he reprimanded him. However, he still remembered the bone-chilling cold brought by the cold sweat on his back when he was reprimanded by Richard. No, I don't know what's going on. In the end, faced with the choice of being reprimanded by Richard or being taught a lesson by Chidori, Sosuke Xiangliang decisively chose the latter. This was because to Sosuke Xiangliang, there was a huge difference in status between superior and inferior. It was enough to cause Sosuke Xiangliang to fall into a situation of eternal damnation. No, doubt. Chidori was not a fool. On the contrary, she was very smart and even very sensitive. When Sosuke Xiangliang fell into a dilemma, Chidori could already tell that Sosuke Xiangliang did know something, but he chose to hide it because of something. Without hesitation, Qin Yao wanted to grab Xiangliang Sosuke's collar. He didn't know where he had pulled out a paper fan, but just as he was about to slap the paper fan on Xiangliang Sosuke's face, he stopped. Sorry, student Sosuke Xiangliang. I was too excited. Suddenly realizing that her actions seemed to be out of line, Chidori slowly let go of Sosuke Xiangliang's collar. After softly apologizing, she prepared to turn around and leave. However, just as Chidori was about to turn around and leave, she discovered that a man and a woman were standing not far behind her. The man was Rei Minkai, who had not come to school for a while. As for the woman, she was a young girl wearing a high school uniform. She had a head of beautiful pink hair, an elegant bearing, and a dignified appearance. Long time no see, student Chidori. I didn't expect you to be so energetic. Rei Minkai took the lead to greet Chidori, then looked at Sosuke Xiangliang. Student Xiangliang, can I trouble you? I might need some space here. Sosuke Xiangliang looked at Rei Minkai, then looked at the pink-haired girl standing beside him, and slowly nodded. As the representative of the Mithril High School, Sosuke Xiangliang had to cooperate with Rei Minkai and the others. Thus, after accepting Rei Minkai's request, Sosuke Xiangliang walked to the side and silently checked for Rei Minkai and the others. Good day, student Chidori. I am Euphemia Libertania. From today onwards, I will be a member of Year 2 Class 4 and will be studying in this school for a period of time. I hope that during this period of time, I will be able to form a deep friendship with you. Euphemia took 2 steps forward, stood in front of Chidori with a smile on her face, and softly introduced herself. You obviously. Although Euphemia was currently wearing an ordinary high school's female school uniform, in reality, Chidori was still keenly aware of the difference between Euphemia and ordinary people. Her elegant demeanor, dignified words and deeds, and inadvertently revealed a majesty that was above all living beings. What is the background of this? Mercenary? General? Or princess? Thoughts flashed through Chidori's mind, but in the end, she still pulled the corner of her mouth, allowing herself to respond to Euphemia's goodwill as politely as possible. Hello, I am Chidori. I'm also a member of Year 2 Class 4. You're the transfer student? I didn't expect to meet you here, so coincidentally. Chidori was currently located in a remote area of the teaching building. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted to interrogate Sosuke Xiangliang, Chidori probably wouldn't have appeared here. Yes, perhaps it was a coincidence. However, I came here specifically to find you. Student Chidori. Euphemia smiled slightly and actually went straight to the point to express her intentions. Me? You can't find me. Chidori was stunned for a moment, then subconsciously waved the paper fan in her hand and laughed. Ah, you really know how to joke. I'm so ordinary, not beautiful, and a girl with a bad personality. Why would anyone come looking for me? Moreover, you, Euphemia, can tell at a glance that you're a rich young lady, so you won't have any interactions with me. Chidori, who repeatedly excused herself, never would have thought that Euphemia's next sentence would cause her to be stunned. No, I did come here specifically to find you. Chidori wants to be a classmate. No, or rather, we can change the name. Esteemed Whisperer, I wonder if you have time to talk to me? Chapter 407. Elegant and dignified, treating people like a spring breeze. This was the greatest feeling the second grade class 4 had for the new transfer student. Especially when this transfer student had a beautiful face that was enough to make people fall head over heels. Most of the students in the second grade class 4 immediately had a good impression of this beautiful and unfamiliar transfer student. Moreover, in the eyes of some girls who were burning with gossip, the white cat in the arms of the transfer student looked familiar. Thus, under their inquiries, a piece of gossip that instantly spread throughout the entire Array Generation High School was born. Kacha. Among the few people standing in the corner of the classroom, Tokapan Kyoko habitually took a few photos of her beloved photos and didn't forget to ridicule them. The transfer students are really popular. Beside him, Chidori's face was full of helplessness as she weakly responded. Probably, right now, Chidori didn't want to care about the topic of transfer students. She only knew that this elegant and generous transfer student, who brought a sense of pressure to others with his every move, was coming for her. This was a transfer student who had just transferred over. It was similar to a transfer student who had a heaven and earth difference in treatment, but it was also different. Ow! Student Chidori. Do you have any questions? Sensing Chidori's gaze, as if she was looking at a husky who loved to tear down the house, Xiangliang Soji was somewhat baffled. You knew the purpose of this transfer student from the beginning? Chidori felt as if her worldview over the years was about to collapse. Probably. Although the order I received was not detailed, I could guess some of it. Don't worry. No one will do anything bad to you. Xiangliang Soji was just about to call her Euphemia, but he immediately changed his words. For the students of the Array Generation High School, it was better not to know Euphemia's true identity. After all, the fact that the dignified empress of a country would actually come to this unremarkable and ordinary school was something that was enough to shock their worldview. Well, forget it. Seeing that more and more people were surrounding Euphemia, Qinyao, who felt that something was wrong, wanted to step forward and use her unparalleled strength and courage to separate the people in half. She slammed the table and glared at the surrounding students who were burning with gossip. I say, you guys should know when to stop. Today is Euphemia's first day at our school. Aren't you afraid of scaring him if you surround him like this? What's more, if you continue to crowd around like this, you might attract the teacher's attention. At that time, something unexpected might happen. After shouting loudly to stop everyone, Qinyao wanted to turn around and look at Euphemia, who was still at ease in the face of everyone's questions. Euphemia, I'm sorry. I think you must be tired, right? Why don't I show you around our school? Hearing this, Euphemia looked left and right, then slowly nodded. In that case, I'll leave it to Qinyao. So, in the midst of everyone's regretful voice, Euphemia, who picked up the white cat Zero, stepped on a very rhythmic pace and followed behind Chidori, leaving the classroom. The back view of Euphemia and Qinyao leaving together was captured by Tokapan Kyoko. The battle between the goddess of Year 2 Class 4 and the new empress is really something to look forward to. What Tokapan Kyoko did not expect was that her unintentional ridicule actually received Sagara Sosuke's approval. Yes, maybe that's the case. However, I think Qinyao is not as good as His Majesty. His Majesty? Tokapan Kyoko blinked, as if she had heard something incredible. No, nothing. You heard wrong. Sagara Sosuke, who realized that he had a slip of the tongue, quickly stepped forward and followed, leaving Tokapan Kyoko with a face full of doubts. What the hell is going on? In the office, Kagurazuka Eri was also under a lot of pressure, because, similar to Qinyao, no Bundai High School welcomed a new transfer student as well as a new teacher, an ice beauty with bright blonde hair. Her name was Fianna. From today onwards, she would work in this school as a physical education teacher. Whether it was due to her natural female intuition or because of Fianna's almost overwhelming appearance, the moment Kagurazuka saw Fianna, she almost subconsciously went into a state of alert. And this point became even more obvious when she saw that Rei Minkai, who had disappeared for a long time, suddenly returned to school to work, and the new blonde teacher seemed to have some unspeakable secret. It was so obvious that even her own junior, Tara Takako, could see it clearly. Fianna-sensei, you're saying that you can start class today? As the homeroom teacher, Kagurazaka Eri asked very responsibly. Yes, I'm ready. Kagurazaka-sensei. Fianna very straightforwardly answered Kagurazaka Eri's question. Her every action made Kagurazaka Eri feel that the blonde beauty in front of her didn't seem to be a physical education teacher in the ordinary sense, but more like one of those soldiers who appeared on the news. How could it be? Maybe I'm thinking too much. After secretly suppressing her own unreliable thoughts, Eri Kagurazaka tried her best to maintain the attitude of a senpai and nodded at Fianna. Good. I'll leave the rest of the class to you. Fianna-sensei. Yes. Leave it to me. Tara Takako, who had been watching for a long time, quietly moved to Kagurazaka Eri's side and whispered, Senpai, do you think there will be any problems? This new Fianna-sensei seems to give me a similar feeling to the problematic student in your class. When mentioning the problematic student in her class, Kagurazaka Eri suddenly sighed and shook her head. Maybe. But at least this Fianna-sensei doesn't look like Xiong Liang-san who messes around. After all, they're all adults. Kagurazaka Eri and Tara Takako's guesses about Fianna probably wouldn't have any answers for a while. The only thing they knew was that when Euphemia and Fianna entered this ordinary high school, Nojime High School would usher in an extremely lively period of time. Someone sitting in the conference room also thought so. I really didn't expect that our principal would coincidentally fall sick and need to be hospitalized. This is really regrettable, right? Rei Minkai-sensei. Lin Shueidun, the current president of the Student Council of Meidai High School, opened his fan and subtly looked at Lei Minkai, who was sitting opposite him under the cover of the fan. That's really regrettable. To be honest, if I didn't just come back from a business trip abroad, I would definitely be the first to rush to the hospital to visit the principal. Rei Minkai slightly shook his head and showed a trace of regret on his face. But Rei Minkai, who was talking about regret, knew the inside story of the principal's illness. As one of Mallory's good friends, when Euphemia was going to enter Array High School as a transfer student for a period of time, not only did the principal quickly handle Euphemia and Fianna's enrollment and employment process, but after everything was settled, he immediately hid in the hospital with the excuse of feeling unwell and no longer cared about the affairs of Array High School. Of course, in this almost escape-like situation, Nojime High School's affairs were taken over by the professional team sent by Mallory. These changes naturally couldn't escape Lin Shueidun's eyes. Yes, if the principal didn't refuse to visit, I'm afraid I could also tell you about the principal's current situation. As he spoke, Lin Shueidun suddenly put away his fan and looked at Rei Minkai's eyes and asked, How long will Rei-sensei stay here this time? Maybe half a month, or maybe a semester. After all, there's so many things you have to deal with them one by one, right? Rei Minkai smiled slightly, but didn't give a direct response. However, these answers were enough for a smart person like Lin Shueidun. Is that so? Then, I have a presumptuous request. I don't know if Rei-sensei can make an exception. Lin Shueidun said word by word, and at the same time, paid attention to the changes in Rei Minkai's face. Oh, please say, if I can help. Rei Minkai raised his eyebrows. I believe Rei-sensei also saw it. Right now, the student union is very short of manpower. I hope that student Euphemia Libertania and teacher Rei Minkai can be our student union's image ambassador and etiquette teacher respectively. As for the length of time, it's all up to Rei-sensei or student Euphemia to decide. How about it? As soon as Lin Shueidun opened his mouth, it made Rei Minkai slightly surprised. He didn't expect this guy to be able to guess the relationship between Rei Minkai and Euphemia and ask for a big price. He wanted the dignified empress of the empire to be the image ambassador of a high school student union. This courage was indeed different from ordinary people. Student Lin Shueidun. I don't know if you've heard of this saying, A man whose heart is not content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Oh, a proverb from the ancient Eastern countries? Of course, I've heard of it. But don't you think this is a good opportunity? For you, and for that student Euphemia, I don't think you came to this school to show off, right? I want to experience more of the ordinary student life. It's not a bad thing. Isn't that right? Lin Shuidun was calm in the face of Ray Mingkai's sarcasm. At this point, Ray Mingkai also slowly nodded. Just like what Lin Shuidun said, Euphemia didn't come to this school to show off. Therefore, as long as Euphemia heard Lin Shuidun's invitation, she would most likely nod and agree after some consideration. Then, let me look forward to what changes will happen to our student union with the help of student Euphemia. Everything depends on you, Teacher Lei. Hee, you really gave me a difficult problem. Where? For Teacher Lei, this is just a small problem, whether it's for you or for that respected sir. Lin Shuidun. What a terrifying character hidden in an ordinary high school. If his stage could be changed from this high school to a bigger and broader stage, it would probably become another legendary story. After a short exchange and reaching an agreement to join the student union, Lin Shuidun was very satisfied and left with Mikahara, who was inseparable from him. At the same time, the communication signal from Avalon also made Ray Minkai's communication device ring. It's me. After Ray Minkai glanced at the closed door of the conference room, he connected to Avalon's communication device. Captain Knight, I'm Cecil. I'm now conveying an urgent message to you. Royd found something incredible in the Research Institute. Captain Knight, you need to go there in person. As soon as the communication device was opened, Cecil's voice came through. Something incredible? I see. Tell Royd that I'll be there in 8 hours. Tell him to keep it safe before then. Sure enough, in the Research Institute that was tightly hidden by the former Mr. AU, there were indeed some secrets that the outside world could not know. And these secrets would be revealed in front of Ray Minkai. Mr. O, what kind of good stuff are you hiding? After hanging up the communication, Ray Minkai's gaze fell on the edge of the playground below. There, Chidori was leading Euphemia on a tour of the school. The roar of the propeller shook the long space, and the helicopter carrying Reynolds slowly landed in a small city at the end of the world in the extreme south of South America. Long time no see, dear madam. As soon as Reynolds got off the helicopter, he welcomed the black-clothed woman who had been waiting by the side. Her every frown and smile was enough to charm all living beings. Let's cut the chatter. Reynolds, you've ruined my business. The woman who made Reynolds express his welcoming attitude was Miss Q, who cooperated with Mr. AU, but immediately hid her identity after Mr. AU's death and quickly disappeared from Amalgam's sight. No, dear madam, although I did contribute to this, it shouldn't be entirely my fault. If it weren't for Mr. AU's greed and wanting to annex my power and property, I'm afraid it wouldn't have ended up like this today. Reynolds didn't deny his intention to encourage Mr. AU to die, but he didn't promise that it was all his fault. Let's not talk about these things. Now, what I'm most concerned about is whether you can take over Mr. AU's power and complete my commission. Miss Q snorted coldly and didn't care about Reynolds' explanation. In the face of Miss Q's approach, Reynolds showed a relaxed smile. Of course, dear madam, you and I have the same purpose. Although our understanding of that item may be somewhat different, in terms of the ultimate goal, we are of the same mind. Now, let me complete the commission that Mr. AU couldn't complete for you. Madam. Chapter 408. The rectangular steel object was about 6 meters long and 5 meters wide at its widest point. It was abandoned in the corner of the warehouse. If no one opened the door of the warehouse, the steel object that was considered a waste in the eyes of most of the technicians in the Research Institute would be sealed. However, not long ago, the door of the warehouse that should have been sealed was opened by someone. Is this what you found? Raymond Kai's footsteps stopped at the door of the warehouse. His eyes then fell on the steel object that was placed in the center of the warehouse, in the most eye-catching position. At first glance, Ray Minkai saw the exposed skeleton and the messy lines. Then, Ray Minkai's eyes slowly moved, but he saw that at the end of the rectangular steel object, there was a very conspicuous structure similar to a gun stock. And moving down along the structure of the gun stock, he could clearly see the trigger structure. Without a doubt, the moment he saw the structure similar to the gun stock and the trigger, Ray Minkai already understood that this abandoned steel object was probably a firearm that was seriously oversized compared to the AS. However, in addition to these extremely conspicuous features, Ray Minkai was more concerned about the barrel and the ammunition chamber of this giant firearm. Normally, to clearly see the internal structure of a firearm, it must be disassembled one by one in order to explore it. However, the steel object placed in the center of the warehouse was not completed for some reason. No, it should be said that it was abandoned after the basic framework was built and the experimental stage was built. Ray Minkai was able to clearly see the internal structure of the firearm. With this look, Ray Minkai's eyes became dignified. "Royd, do you know the origin of this thing?" Ray Minkai did not immediately reveal the true origin of this firearm, but asked Royd, who was standing next to him. Royd was silent for a moment, then took out something from his pocket, a man-made model made of plastic. That was the beam gun used by Copeland. If Ray Minkai was not mistaken, the origin of this Copeland beam gun should be the beam rifle used by Ancestor 0079. "Captain Knight, if I'm not mistaken, this messy pile of parts should be this guy. No, maybe it's a close relative of this guy." Royd held the Copeland beam rifle model in his hand and shook it in front of Ray Minkai. Then, after a wry smile, he sighed. "If it weren't for His Majesty's recommendation that I try to make Copeland and get more ideas for the development of the body, I'm afraid I wouldn't have recognized the true origin of this pile of parts." Royd's sigh made Ray Minkai nod slowly. Since Ray Minkai saw and personally drove the new Roaring Flame Demon Sword, he saw similarities from various technical details and even the style of the UC technology tree. This was probably due to Lloyd's exposure to part of the UC Century's body development technology and the influence of the steel plum model that he had personally made. This is a beam rifle. Although it looks a bit tattered now, I'm afraid this is the beam rifle used by Marine Gaude that I once drove. Royd, do you know what this means? Ray Minkai's face gradually became solemn. Although Ray Minkai had various speculations about the technology hidden in this research institute, he did not expect that there would be technology related to the UC world here. Apart from Ray Minkai's side, there was only one person who could cause such an impact. Miss Q, Xia Yufeng. Thinking of this, Ray Minkai's call immediately received a response from Xia Yufeng, one of the twins. "Yes, Sir Knight, please instruct." Xia Yufeng respectfully walked out of the shadows and slightly bowed to Ray Minkai. Under the guidance of Fianna, who was better than the twins in terms of body piloting technology and personal strength, the twins' current style gradually had a trace of the style of the Empire's Night Order. After this sentence flashed in Ray Minkai's mind, he immediately asked, "When you interrogated the staff of this research institute, did you ask if there was any special person here?" Xia Yufeng was silent for a moment, as if she was recalling the interrogation process at that time. "Yes, Sir Knight. There was indeed a mysterious woman accompanied by the former Mr. AU who stayed in this research institute for a period of time. But strangely, except for the memory of this woman's appearance, no one could recall the name of this woman and what she did here. Only the memory of the mysterious woman's appearance, but no memory of her name and what she did." Ray Minkai was a little surprised, but not surprised. He even had some doubts. "I'm afraid that memory manipulation was done. But if memory manipulation was done, why didn't they erase their memory of coming here? Maybe there wasn't enough time." Royd next to him gave a speculation. "Not enough?" Ray Minkai asked back. "Maybe. This is just my guess. If the other party was using the resources of this research institute to carry out some kind of body development, and was about to or even completed after suddenly learning the news of the former Mr. AU's death, was it a hasty evacuation?" Royd's speculation gave Ray Minkai some ideas. If this speculation was correct, perhaps the answer to why this beam rifle, with only a rough framework, appeared in this secluded corner of the warehouse could be found. Xia Yufang, go and check the entry and exit records of the Research Institute. I don't need the entry and exit records of the staff. You just need to investigate the material consumption and supply of the Research Institute. Yes, do it now. Xia Yufang turned around and left without hesitation. She did not have the slightest reaction to Ray Mingkai's unguarded back. Captain Knight, are you trying to deduce what kind of monster this Research Institute has created through the material consumption and supply situation? Royd only needed to think a little to understand Ray Mingkai's intention. And, yes, since the other party can perform memory manipulation, it means that the records of the staff's entry and exit may also be modified. Although there is a suspected flaw left on the way, we still need to speculate the general result from other aspects. Ray Mingkai's gaze fell on the unfinished beam rifle. He suddenly had an idea. Royd, are you interested in doing something? Royd raised his eyebrows, his right hand playing with the model of the Templar beam rifle in his hand, and smiled. Why, Captain Knight, are you interested in this unfinished beam rifle? Maybe, but what I'm more concerned about is, will there be anything hidden in this beam rifle? Lei Mingkai glanced at Royd's eager face and continued, I'm not sure if you're going to give it a try. Even if there is nothing hidden, I think we should make use of this beam rifle. After all, if it stays here, the technicians of the Research Institute may not be able to complete it, and they may not have the technology. Royd heard this and nodded repeatedly. Indeed, when cracking the database of the Research Institute, I found that although the technology here made my eyes light up, overall, there's still some gaps. That's it. I'll have someone send this guy back to Avalon later. Royd smiled and added, Don't worry. Of course. Before that, we have to disassemble this guy, and then after strict testing, we can send it back to Avalon. And that's it. Royd, I'll leave everything to you. After making the final decision, Ray Mingkai was ready to leave. Ray Mingkai did not plan to stay in the Research Institute any longer. This time, he came because of the appearance of the beam rifle. Oh, right. Royd, in the next few days, Mira needs to go back to school with me. I'll leave the technology here to you as well. Really? Is it because she missed classes for a long time? That's tough. In my opinion, Miss Myra's knowledge is far beyond the level of high school students in this world. If she goes back to school like this, I'm afraid she won't be able to learn anything. Royd nodded and gave his opinion. Although Royd had the help of his right-hand man in terms of skills, who would refuse to have another helper of similar ability level? It's not about academics. Royd, this is a necessary way for Mira to recover from her mental trauma as soon as possible. Although Mira was now fully invested in the field of body development technology, Lei Mingkai still felt that it was necessary for Mira to have a memory of her high school days that wouldn't be a blank slate. Really? Then there's no other way. It seems that I have to work overtime. It's rare that I don't hear Royd's nagging. I didn't expect such a rare leisure time to pass like this. Why would Sahil continue to nag at Royd? This seemed to be an unexpected piece of gossip. However, Ray Mingkai was not the kind of person who gossiped. Therefore, Royd's self-pity was ignored by Ray Mingkai. The next day, Ray Mingkai was not the only one who returned from the Research Institute deep in the mountains. Behind him was Mira, who had been away from school for a while. Brother, why do you have to go back to school? I still have some technical problems that I haven't dealt with yet. Mira, who had changed into her school uniform, looked at the school gate of a Ray Generation High School with some difficulty. Compared to staying in school, Mira seemed to prefer to stay in NAKU and carry out various technical development and equipment improvement projects for the Raging Flame Demon Sword. Mira, body development is important, but you have to pay attention to the balance between work and rest. What's more, UFFI is also studying in this school now. Your Majesty? Your Majesty is also studying in a Ray Generation High School? Mira, who was immersed in body development technology, did not seem to know that Euphemia had entered this Ray Generation High School, so when Ray Mingkai mentioned it, she was very surprised. Yes, in addition, you have to call Her Majesty UFFI or Euphemia in school. Otherwise, UFFI might be angry. Ray Mingkai reminded Mira with a smile. Other than in the palace and on the throne, Euphemia did not want the people close to her to be bound by the identity of the Empress of the Britannia Empire when they were together. Oh, Mira, who had not yet realized what was happening, nodded blankly. Suddenly, an explosion tore apart the tranquility of a regeneration high school's morning. Boom! The surging flames rushed out of the gate on the first floor, and in the strong airflow, some torn clothes and cloth shoes that were burned through by the heat flew everywhere. The sound of explosion and screams suddenly became the main melody at this time. Looking at the billowing smoke, the messy gate, Rei Minkai's eyebrows quickly jumped a few times. Xiangliang Zongjia. However, before Lei Minkai could make a move, a familiar and sharp female voice suddenly rang out. And at the same time, the sound of a heavy slap that made one's head shrink subconsciously followed closely behind. What the hell are you doing? Xiangliang Zongjia. What are you doing so early in the morning? Explain it to me. Before the smoke dissipated, Rei Minkai heard a familiar reprimand from inside. Is it starting again? Rei Minkai shook his head slightly and took Mira to find Tokapan Kyoko standing by the messy gate. Ah, it's Rei-sensei. Mira-san, you're back to school too. When Tokapan Kyoko saw Rei Minkai and Mira appear at the same time, she suddenly cried out in surprise, and then looked back at the gate, looking at the two people who were making a scene. Yes, I don't know what's going on. When Koichi and I walked to the school gate, the entrance suddenly exploded. I see. Although Tokapan Kyoko didn't know what was going on, Rei Minkai had already guessed it. So, after looking around to see if there were any injuries, Rei Minkai walked through the gate and separated the two people who were making a scene. Okay, student Chidori and student Xiangliang Zongjia. The most important thing now was not to pursue Xiangliang Zongjia's fault, but to deal with this mess as soon as possible. Isn't that right? Humph. Xiangliang Zongjia. Just you wait. You'll come with me to see the president later. Chidori also knew that she had to deal with this mess as soon as possible. So after leaving behind some harsh words, she pulled her good friend Tokapan Kyoko and the confused Mira to start cleaning up the aftermath. Sergeant Xiangliang Zongjia, this is not a battlefield. Moreover, the amalgam should not make any moves for the time being. I hope you can be quiet for a while. Although Rei Minkai knew that Xiangliang Zongjie's personality was like this, but to be on the safe side, Rei Minkai still had to remind Xiangliang Zongjia. Otherwise, if Xiangliang Zongjia hurt Euphemia in a moment of recklessness, it would probably rise to the level of an international dispute. After all, with Euphemia's status as the Empress of the Empire, that kind of price was not something that Xiangliang Zongjia could bear. Yes, I got it. Obviously, Xiangliang Zongjia also thought of this problem. So, Xiangliang Zongjia, who was covered in cold sweat, immediately responded. The only thing was, how long would the effect last? Rei Minkai himself had no idea. Looks like State Zero still needs to follow UFFI closely. Chapter 409. In the end, the farce was over. However, under Xiangliang Soji's morning explosion, those students who were injured because of it also received painful but happy compensation as well as a long period of sick leave. In addition, the original principal seemed to have made a decision. On the third day after Euphemia entered the school, he decisively gave the position of principal to another new principal with the reason that her illness had worsened. This new principal accepted a huge amount of sponsorship from the Mithril group behind Xiangliang Soji without any hesitation. Thus, he also very smoothly cooperated with Lin Shuadungsen, the student council president, to settle the mess created by Xiangliang Soji. However, the mess created by Xiangliang Soji was settled. But a new mess quietly arrived when the lunch break was about to end. What? Someone went missing? Sitting in the office, Rei Minkai, who was browsing through the technical information sent by Royd, looked at Lin Shuadungsen, who suddenly came to the office with some surprise. Lin Shuadungsen closed the paper fan in his hand with a paw sound and slowly nodded his head. His expression actually revealed a trace of graveness. From his expression, it seemed that this sudden incident wasn't a simple missing person case. Teacher Lei, this is the information regarding some unknown strangers who appeared near Jindai High School recently. Under Lin Shuadungsen's signal, the young girl, Meishu Yuanren, who always followed behind him, handed over a notebook with a bunch of dates and places where the strangers appeared in front of Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai, who didn't know what was going on, casually flipped open the notebook and looked at Lin Shuadungsen with some doubt. This should be handed over to the police. Why get it to me? Swish. Lin Shuadungsen's hand moved, and the paper fan that was just closed opened up again. Unknowingly, the words malicious intent were actually written on it, and it was even written in Chinese characters. Looking at this familiar idiom, Ray Minkai's eyes secretly twitched a few times. What is this guy hinting at? Teacher Lei, the meaning of the time and place recorded in here, maybe other people don't know, but I believe that Ray Minkai has already guessed it. Lin Shuadungsen's face was more than half covered by the paper fan, only revealing a pair of eyes that were sizing up Ray Minkai's expression. Really? Ray Minkai lowered his gaze and didn't reveal any abnormality that Lin Shuadungsen could see. Maybe I should go to the police. I believe that they will be interested in the information provided by the student council president of Jindai High School. Ray Minkai's uncooperative, Lin Shuadungsen slightly frowned. From the beginning, he had been secretly investigating the activities of the strangers who had recently appeared near Jindai High School through certain channels. It wasn't until the first moment of the disappearance that Lin Shuadungsen dared to confirm that these strangers were probably here for some people who had recently entered Jindai High School. Teacher, although according to the current situation, calling the police was undoubtedly the best solution. But as a teacher, don't you think you should do something for those missing students? Lin Shuadungsen continued to try to dig out information that he didn't know from Lei Minkai's mouth. Calling the police is what we can do for now. After all, even with this information, we can only do so much. No matter how hard Lin Shuadungsen tried, Lei Minkai remained unmoved. He looked like he needed to call the police to deal with this matter immediately. In the end, Lin Shuadungsen gave up the idea of continuing to interrogate Ray Minkai and tried to find a way to solve the current predicament through the power behind his right-hand woman. After watching Lin Shuadungsen and Miyoshihara leave, Ray Minkai immediately closed the database in his hands and connected to another communication. It's me. Do you have time now? Fianna. Yes. Night, Captain. I have an hour of free time now. After that, I'm afraid I have to attend a physical education class. On the other side of the communication, Fianna asked calmly. Yes. Go to the back of the mountain. I suspect that there are people spying on this area near Jindai High School. Find out as soon as possible. UFFI's safety will be taken care of by State Zero. You don't have to worry. Ray Minkai stood up and looked at the green mountain forest outside the window. If there was anything that could make a person disappear during a short lunch break, the mountain forest behind Jindai High School will be the best place to commit the crime. Yes, Ray Minkai had enough confidence in Fianna's ability to act. However, until now, Ray Minkai did not understand the thoughts of those people. If they were targeting Euphemia, they would not attack the students of Jindai High School. After all, Euphemia, who had just arrived, did not have many acquaintances in this school. However, if he placed his target on Qinyao, the answers seemed to be on the verge of coming out. Reynolds? As soon as this question came out, Ray Minkai immediately rejected it. Whether it was Mithril's intelligence channel or Mallory's own intelligence channel, they all showed that Reynolds was now incorporating the leaders of amalgam forces all over the world. He had no time to care about the situation here. If it's not Reynolds, then who could it be? Miss Q. When the new hypothesis surfaced, another face immediately appeared in Ray Minkai's mind. It was a face with typical clown makeup. No, if it's them, I'm afraid Lin Shuadungsen wouldn't believe that an ordinary person could track them. No matter how powerful the underground forces behind his wife are, they wouldn't be able to detect the enemy's actions from the depths of the stars. After listing all the possibilities one by one, Ray Minkai, who rejected them one by one, could not come up with an accurate answer in the end. Fortunately, Fianna, who went to the back of the mountain, sent a message that made Ray Minkai come to a conclusion. Sir Knight Chief, it seems to be someone from Amalgam. In the back of the mountain, Fianna stared at a wheeled trail that was out of place in the surrounding woods. At the end of this set of tracks was a highly hidden camp, but now it was empty. The sharp-eyed Fianna was able to deduce the general outline from the traces left in the camp. Amalgam? This was an unexpected answer, but it was also a reasonable answer. A stranger who could wander around Array Dai High School, except for Mithril, could only be Amalgam, who was also pursuing the Whispers. However, if this was someone from Amalgam, then whose force was it? After thinking about it, Ray Minkai raised his hand and dialed a number. It's me. Do you have time now? The communication was quickly connected. Especially after hearing Ray Minkai's voice, the person on the other end of the communication became extremely respectful. Yes, Sir Knight Chief, please tell me. The communication that Ray Minkai dialed was the new Mr. A.U. Qian Shanwu. If there was anyone who could sort out all the Amalgam members in Japan in such a short period of time, it would be the new Mr. O. After Ray Minkai's voice calmly and briefly explained the current situation, he soon received a reply from Qian Shanwu. Sir Knight Chief, I didn't send anyone to participate in this matter, but in my information channel, no other executive officer gave the order to execute this plan. Qian Shanwu paused, then showed a mocking smile. After all, everyone can't even protect themselves now. Either they will be swallowed by others, or they will be torn apart and swallowed alive by Reynolds. Is that so? Then, maybe I can already make a conclusion. Qian Shanwu, continue to carry out your mission. I will take care of things here. Yes. After Qian Shanwu didn't have any news about the Amalgam troops that appeared at Sendai High School, there was only one possibility. That was the Amalgam troops that appeared near Sendai High School. They were probably a remnant, a troop that lost its commander and automatically broke away from the Amalgam's power network. Fianna, confirm the enemy's position as soon as possible. In addition, before reinforcements arrive, keep a safe distance to monitor as much as possible. Yes, Sir Knight Chief. Ray Minkai, who had arranged everything, turned and walked out of the office. However, before he could go far, the door of Class 2 Class 4 was suddenly opened. An angry face also appeared outside the door. Moreover, it was accompanied by Tokapan Kyoko's slightly panicked cry. Xiaoyao, Xiaoyao, don't be impulsive. We can still call the police. As soon as he heard Tokapan Kyoko's words, Ray Minkai's eyes suddenly became fierce. It seemed that the answer was about to come out. The troops that appeared near Sendai High School were probably Amalgam. Otherwise, it would be difficult to explain Chidori's angry expression. Chidori, don't worry. I rescued the students who were kidnapped. Without hesitation, without pause, as if he was telling a simple fact, Sagara Sosuke suddenly stood up from his seat and looked at Chidori, who was waving the envelope in his hand. As soon as he heard Sagara Sosuke's words, Chidori was about to explode. Chidori, who was already angry, took out a huge paper fan from somewhere and beat it crazily at Sagara Sosuke's head. Do you want to die? You don't even know how many kidnappers there are? Looking at Chidori, who was crazily using Sagara Sosuke as a punching bag, Ray Minkai coughed a few times, indicating that it should be time for everyone to notice him. Ahem. Everyone, calm down. Our teacher already knows about the rumors of the kidnapping that suddenly appeared in the school. After many investigations, this is just a prank. Everyone can go back to class and prepare for the next class with peace of mind. After casually comforting the excited Chidori and the other students, Ray Minkai pulled Sagara Sosuke over. Sagara Sosuke. Now, we still have some compensation for the explosion in the morning that we need your help with. Please come with me. Euphemia, who was sitting in the classroom, tilted her head slightly and whispered a few words. Will there be anything wrong? What do you think will happen? You should be worried about the kidnappers. If I follow them, I'm afraid the back mountain of the school will suffer. White Cat stayed Zero, who was lying on the table, opened its eyes slightly, and said disdainfully. White Cat State Zero also knew about Rei Mingkai's previous communication. Therefore, White Cat State Zero, who understood its position, would not worry about Rei Mingkai's safety. Is that so? Then, we should also look after Chidori and Mira. Yes. Not long after, Sagura Sosuke, who was forcibly dragged from the classroom to the back of the school by Rei Mingkai on the grounds of assistance, finally came back to his senses. Lei, Night Chief, have you confirmed the identity of the kidnapper? Yes. It should be the amalgam. Or rather, it should be the residual molecules that separated from the amalgam. As Rei Mingkai spoke, Fianna's message came through the communication channel. His previous speculation was correct. The real culprit of the kidnapping was the amalgam. The fanatic who betrayed the amalgam belonged to the former Mr. AU and was loyal to him. Although he did not know the reason, after the former Mr. AU was killed by Qian Shanwu, these fanatics seemed to receive a common order to guide them to complete the former Mr. EU's final mission. From the results of Fianna's secret observation, this traitor who betrayed the amalgam should have come for Chidori. Moreover, the hostages they captured were also good classmates who could talk to Qin Yao in the Array Generation High School. It's really down and out. After Fianna sent back the photos she took, Rei Mingkai showed a mocking smile. From the pictures, although these traitors looked good, their clothes were extremely unnatural. It was as if they hadn't been washed in the past month, and they looked as sloppy as if they hadn't been washed in the past month. Night Chief, is this the kidnapper? Sagura Sosuke, who was standing next to him, also noticed the photos from the front and couldn't help but take a look. Yes. Do you have any ideas? Rei Mingkai glanced at Sagura Sosuke, an expert among experts. Yes, I have some ideas. It's just that I need your help, Night Chief. Hee hee. Okay, now Fianna is on standby over there. If you have any plans, tell her as much as possible. It's just that I hope to leave a few alive. I still have some things to dig out from their mouths. Understood. In the woods behind the Array Generation High School, a trembling young girl had both her hands tied and her mouth sealed with tape. She could only look at the terrifying man walking in and out of the tent with a terrified expression. Boss, why are we still doing this? That Mr. AU is dead. We should hurry up and find the next home. The man who was being watched by the frightened girl walked impatiently to the man who was sitting in the depths of the tent without saying a word. Wait a little longer. If we leave like this, I'm afraid we'll have to eat the northwest wind. The man called the boss lowered his gaze slightly and fell on the photo on the table. If we can catch this girl before we leave and give her to Reynolds, we will still be the trump card of the amalgam. Isn't that right? Chapter 410. That's it. As far as Lei Mingkai's eyes could see, there were less than 10 people scattered all over the forest behind the mountain. That's it. Other than that, there's only one AS body that has turned on the ECS system and is hidden in the depths of the woods. Fianna calmly said the information she had gathered. Although Rei Mingkai knew that the quality of Amalgam's combat personnel was very good, they still dared to cause trouble in this high school, with less than 10 infantry and the power of a king of hell knowing that there were still mithril combat personnel in this school. Should it be said that Reynolds was cautious in the original timeline? Or should it be said that this group of people didn't understand the importance of mithril to Chidori High School? Rei Mingkai pondered for a moment and felt that there might be another possibility. Fianna, did Qian Shanwu contact you? Fianna nodded. We contacted him 10 minutes ago. According to what he said, something should have happened when he incorporated the forces of the original Mr. AU, which caused a team that was once valued by the original Mr. AU to defect and leave. Defectors? If that's the case, it might explain why he acted so recklessly. The news from Qian Shanwu had already made Lei Mingkai understand what was going on with this group of kidnappers that had suddenly appeared. It turned out that the amalgam was determined to seize Chidori, then it would inevitably reproduce the scene that Rei Mingkai knew. Otherwise, the amalgam wouldn't use this almost unplanned action. Moreover, through the existence of Qian Shanwu, Lei Mingkai had already secretly controlled at least 1/3 of the amalgam's forces. He was also competing with Reynolds who also controlled 1/3 of the Amalgam's forces for the remaining 1/3 of the Amalgam forces. Fianna, get ready to move. Since it's not an attack by the Amalgam, we don't need to be so cautious. Solve this matter as quickly as possible. Yes, Fianna responded, but did not act immediately. Is there anything else? Yes. The soldier from Mithril wants to participate in this operation. In addition, after Mithril learned about this, it seems that they have sent the other 2 members of the SRT team here. Under Rei Minkai's inquiry, Fianna told him the news from Xiangliang Sosuke and Mithril. Oh, Captain Teresa's instructions? It should be that after Xiangliang Sosuke learned the news, he immediately sent a request for help to the son of Dan Nu. Rei Minkai pondered for a moment, then waved his hand. Since Mithril wants to solve this matter, let them handle it. Fianna, just make sure you don't let the leader get away. I need to know something from him. Yes. Fianna agreed, then turned and left. A few minutes later, a gunshot broke the silence of the forest. 222. What followed were several rapid and short bursts of shots, and the muffled thuds of bodies falling to the ground. It was Xiangliang Sosuke and Kurlutz. One of them was responsible for sniping the enemies that might hinder Xiangliang Sosuke's assault, and the other was responsible for the assault as fast as possible. In just a few seconds, the enemies who controlled the passage leading to the foot of the mountain were killed by Xiangliang Sosuke and Kurlutz. Well, good job. Lei Minkai watched all of this happen through the binoculars and couldn't help but nod. It's just that the infantry was easy to deal with, but the Hell King hiding by relying on the ECS system was the biggest obstacle. Boom! While thinking, a cloud of soil mixed with broken branches exploded in the woods. In the midst of the soil that soared into the sky, the Hell King who had activated the ECS system was also forcefully pulled out of the ECS state by this impact. Obviously, the change of the Hell King being pulled out shocked the enemies who were trying to suppress Xiangliang Sosuke. They didn't expect that the Hell King they had would be pulled out of the ECS state. What happened? The Hell King was discovered? The Hell King's pilot didn't pay attention to the surprise of his companions, but immediately raised his right hand and opened a screen in the direction of the attack. Boom! In the next second, an explosion suddenly occurred on this screen. Immediately afterward, a flash of light split the thick smoke caused by the explosion and slashed fiercely on the screen opened by the Hell King. The loud sound of the impact made the enemies hiding next to them frown, but the corners of their mouths curled up into a mocking smile. In the memories of these enemies, any AS who dared to directly attack the screen produced by the Lambda Drive system would inevitably suffer a backlash. However, the situation of dying from the backlash in the memory did not appear. What appeared in front of the Hell King's pilot was the long sword that was blocked by the screen and revealed its true body. It slowly cut open the screen opened by the Lambda Drive system and slashed at the Hell King hiding behind the Lambda Drive system at an increasing speed. How can this be? This phenomenon was beyond the scope of knowledge that the Hell King's pilot could understand. It made the Hell King's pilot, who had been relying on the Lambda Drive system, lose his mind. There was no way for him to react to the long sword that was slashing in front of him. Squeak! The armor on the Hell King's body was cut open. Following that, the pilot's stunned expression disappeared under the sword light that cut the King of Hell in half. In the wind caused by the slash of the sword, the Hell King, who was regarded as the enemy's trump card, was cut in half by the sword and fell to the ground with a loud bang, splashing a cloud of dust. This, on the other side, Xiangliang Sosuke, who saw the Hell King appear with his own eyes but was cut in half by the sword in the next moment, subconsciously asked, "Yours too. Is it you?" "No. It's not me. I haven't launched an attack yet." And that guy jumped out without permission. Melissa's bitter smile came from the communication. Melissa, who had come all the way here and was ready to join the battle, realized that she might have come for nothing in the battle just now. It's not Sister Mao. Then who could it be? Cruz's doubts also sounded in the communication channel. But the next moment, his gaze also looked through the scope of the sniper rifle and saw the real culprit who cut the Hell King in half. That That's the Lionheart Knight? This paint is used by the commander. Cruz's surprise also made Melissa look at the red body that kicked the remains of the Hell King to the side. The Red Lionheart Knight. Looks like it's Fianna's personal guard captain. 222. Xiangliang Sosuke raised his hand and fired a series of shots, knocking down the enemy who tried to turn around and escape to the ground. He then turned his head to look at the Red Lionheart Knight. Looks like our work is unnecessary. Rei Minkai didn't know whether Xiangliang Sosuke's actions were unnecessary or not. He only knew that he had to pry out the information that the leader who was tied up and sitting on a chair knew. Of course, whether it was Mithril or Avalon, there were enough interrogators, so Rei Minkai didn't have to do it himself. What he needed to do was to sit on the side and wait for the news. And the unlucky female student was taken away by Lin Shui Duanshin and Meishu Yuanren, who heard the news. Knight, if we knew you were here, we wouldn't have to come all the way here. When Lei Minkai and Cruz met, this guy immediately poured out his grievances. Isn't it good to come here? At least, you'll have a few days off to walk around here. Rei Minkai smiled and didn't pay attention to Cruz's complaints. This guy was only acting like this because he was unhappy that Fianna had snatched away a great opportunity that should have been in the limelight. Don't. How is that possible? Right now, we're very busy. Cruz glanced at Melissa, who was in the middle of interrogating Lei Minkai, and quietly pulled Lei Minkai to the side. I say, Knight, are we about to have a decisive battle with the amalgam? Rei Minkai narrowed his eyes slightly, but he was a little surprised by Cruz's current behavior. At least in Rei Minkai's memory, Cruz didn't have such a behavior. Maybe. Rei Minkai nodded. He didn't admit it, but he didn't deny it either. It was said before that the amalgam was torn. Starting from a moment the original Mr. AU died, the newly assembled amalgam suddenly split. One side was Qian Shanwu, who became the new Mr. AU with the support of Mithril and Avalon, and the other side was Reynolds. According to various news reports during this time, the competition between the two sides for the remaining resources of the amalgam had reached a white-hot level. If Rei Minkai wasn't in the amalgam sphere of influence controlled by Qian Shanwu, he would have seen a battle quietly starting. No matter what, let's get ready first. Rei Minkai patted Cruz's shoulder. Melissa's interrogation skills were very high. She didn't spend much effort to get the information Rei Minkai wanted. Boring. How boring. I thought this guy's bones would be a little tougher. In the end, he's a soft-footed shrimp. Knight, this is the information you want. Melissa put a document in front of Rei Minkai and waved her hand disinterestedly. Okay, this is the end of my mission. Now, except for Xiangliang Sosuke, the rest of the SRT team will withdraw to the son of Dan's slave. Knight, see you later. Melissa's farewell was straightforward and didn't drag on at all. She didn't even show the slightest interest in the information Rei Minkai wanted. She left so quickly. Rei Minkai shrugged and then opened the document. After roughly glancing at the information recorded in the document, Rei Minkai casually threw the document on the table and got up to look at the dark night sky outside. This traitor team wasn't acting on a whim. From the fundamental point of view, this team was probably under the influence of someone and took the action of trying to take Chidori away. If it weren't for the leader of this traitor team's thinking, it would have been solved so easily today. However, this way, the problem would arise. Why did he let this team come to cause trouble when he knew that the leader of this team was lacking in ability? Would the person hiding behind this team, Reynolds, be such a superficial person? The answer was obvious. Reynolds wouldn't do useless work. This man, whose mind had reached the extreme of darkness and whose thinking was distorted to the point of making people's hair stand on end, was not the kind of person who didn't have a plan. If he did this, it wasn't to take Chidori away. I'm afraid that he wanted to send a signal to Rei Minkai. An invitation signal. Invitation? Reynolds, your invitation letter is really expensive. A team equipped with the King of Hell, Reynolds said he would give it away. As expected of the man who mercilessly gave away the chess pieces buried in the upper echelons of Mithril. On the other side of the earth, the sea breeze late at night was bone-chilling. Reynolds' clothes fluttered in the sea breeze. His eyes were slightly raised as he stared at the gradually rising full moon. Behind him, there was the sound of subtle footsteps. "Good evening, Miss Q. It's so late. Aren't you going to rest?" Without turning his head, Reynold knew who it was. "Aren't you the same?" "Your Excellency, Reynold. I didn't expect that such a vicious and merciless person like you would hesitate at this critical moment." Compared to Reynold, who was wearing a coat, the clothes on Miss Q, as a woman, were much thinner. If that fitting red dress was placed at a banquet, it would definitely be an existence that would capture people's minds. However, it was so inappropriate on the beach that was filled with bone-chilling winds. Hesitating, Reynold retracted his gaze and looked at Miss Q's red dress that was tightly clinging to her body under the sea breeze. He smiled slightly and said, "Miss, are you saying that I'm not gentlemanly enough and didn't put my coat on you at the first moment?" In response, Miss Q snorted disdainfully. Even though Miss Q was wearing a thin red dress, she was not afraid of the bone-chilling sea breeze. She coldly said, "No, Reynold, I'm saying, why didn't you take action immediately after determining the location of Mithril's headquarters? You have to know that we're not the only ones spying on Mithril's headquarters." "We're not the only ones? Hee. Mississippi, now is not the time. Our preparations have not been completed yet. Besides, Miss, isn't your mech not ready either?" Reynold didn't care much about Miss Q's responsibilities. Reynold's words made Miss Q fall silent. Then, Miss Q turned around and left without looking back. She didn't have the slightest intention of saying goodbye to Reynold. Leonard was already used to this cold and arrogant look. How ruthless! I didn't expect Miss Q to be so angry. At this time, a teasing voice was sent to Reynold's ears by the sea breeze. "Your Excellency, Mr. J. If you come back, you'd better let me know." Reynold turned his gaze and looked at the other side, at the empty beach. Under his gaze, there was a distortion on the beach, and an extremely strange pale face appeared. It was the clown. It was also Mr. J. "Sorry, Your Excellency Reynold. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." Chapter 411. This was a different story from the original setting. It could also be understood that in order to maintain the writing idea of this book, the dual settings of the Abyss setting and the space-time singularity were adapted. The setting sun was blood red. On a remote island in the Pacific Ocean, the tide that hit the shore back and forth had been stained by the scarlet that gathered from the beach. In the sky, the seagulls that were still lingering around looked down at the island that had already become a land of death. They were constantly observing how the humans who brought death to this island were killing their own kind. Bang! A gunshot tore apart the island that had been stained with scarlet and shrouded in death. "Get out of here, Reynold. Now you still have time to turn back." The undisguised murderous aura, as well as the handgun held by the iron-like wrist, constantly reminded the young man, whose body was mostly dyed red by blood, not to take another step forward. Ah! A scream of pain rang out. It was made by a pretty girl with long brown hair. The girl, who was almost driven to the edge of collapse by the bloody scene of corpses in front of her, screamed in pain. "Let me go! Let me go! Why did you bring me here? I can't do what you said at all. Let me out of here." "Shut up." Facing the muzzle of the gun, the young man still pulled without fear. The girl, whose hair was pulled by the young man, suddenly felt pain. "Let her go. Reynold, this device is not for you to use at all. Why are you so stubborn?" Standing on the corpse of his comrade, the middle-aged man, who was almost the last guardian of this island, shouted loudly. However, his shout did not have the desired effect. Perhaps, from the beginning, his voice would not have played any role at all, because from the beginning, the young man's mind had already been decided. Since that night, the taboo he witnessed. Since that time, he was pushed away by his mother. In the young man's heart, perhaps he had already made up his mind. Until today, the young man, who had exhausted all means and did not hesitate to dye his hands red, finally came in front of the device he knew. For this reason, he sacrificed everything he had and also burned all his subordinates, power, and wealth in order to stand in front of this device and then send the girl, who had been controlled by it, to it. Activate the device. Fulfill his wish. Now, before completing this step, he still needed to clear the last obstacle. What a joke. Lieutenant Colonel Kalinin, I didn't expect that my last enemy would be you. Why didn't you accept my invitation? Logically speaking, to a certain extent, you and I are the same. This world is so ugly, so dirty. Why do you still stand in front of me? The youth's left hand pulled the innocent girl's hair, while his right hand slowly raised the pistol, firmly pointing it at the middle-aged man called Kalinin. Reset the world? Huh. What a beautiful wish. However, after thinking about it carefully, I realized that humans are creatures that live in the present. Whether it was the past or the future, most people's attention was focused on the present. Even the child I hope for should live in the present. The middle-aged man's index finger slightly tightened, and his sharp eyes stared at the young man in front of him, who was Reynolds. The child you hope for? Is it that young soldier called Xiangliang Sosuke? Ha! What a pity. In the surprise attack, just now, he and my fallen angel perished together. The young man, who was called omniscient by his subordinates, said everything he knew with a smile. Then, the young man once again sent out an invitation. Lieutenant Colonel Kalinin, I am very sorry for Xiangliang Sosuke's death, but isn't there an opportunity in front of you now? As long as you get out of the way, after I send this woman to the device, everything will start again, and the dead Xiangliang Sosuke will stand in front of you again. Reynolds' voice was like a devil's whisper, constantly ringing in Kalinin's ears. Bang! Kalinin fired. The whistling bullet didn't hit Reynolds. Instead, it brushed past the feet of the poor girl under Reynolds' control and fell into the pool of scarlet, splashing the girl's clothes red. Reynolds, I've said it. I'm not interested in your plan. Moreover, even if the world is reset like you said, it's still not enough. But in that reset world, you will still exist. At that time, if you're still not satisfied, do you have to reset it again? Kalinin's words made Reynolds stunned. In fact, Reynolds had never thought of what Kalinin had just said. He had never thought of it. All he knew was to find a suitable whisperer, then take the device from Mithril and reset the world. But what would happen after the world was reset? Reynolds really didn't think about it carefully. Perhaps, in Reynolds' heart, there was only a trace of beautiful light left in his life that was almost extinguished in the illusory reset world. Ha ha ha. Reynolds laughed. He really laughed. This was not a laugh of anger. Instead, it was a carefree laughter after being reminded and coming to a sudden realization. I really regret it. Lieutenant Colonel Kalinin, if only you could have said these words to me earlier. Maybe I wouldn't have made these mistakes. Reynolds' words made Kalinin stunned. However, the next second, a gunshot rang out. Bang! It was Reynolds' pistol that fired. At the moment when Kalinin's mind was disturbed by Reynolds' words, Reynolds fired without hesitation. The moment the red flower that symbolized Kalinin's last life bloomed, it meant that no one was blocking Reynolds' path anymore. Reynolds, you'll regret it. Kalinin, who had been fighting with his last breath against Reynolds, struggled to take his last breath. Maybe, Lieutenant Colonel Kalinin, I hope you and I could be good friends in the new world. Finally clearing all obstacles, the youth strode forward, resolutely and coldly stepping on the dark red that drowned the ground, dragging the girl who had lost all ability to resist and will to the device that was said to be able to reset the world. Go, complete the mission that you have been living since you were born. The moment the girl's body completely disappeared into the device, the world in front of Reynolds' eyes turned white, and all the sound was gone, leaving only an indescribable silence. When the sound returned to Reynolds' ears again, when the color appeared in front of Reynolds' eyes again, Reynolds' consciousness gradually returned, and everything in front of him was in his eyes. The furnishings in front of him were so strange yet familiar, but Reynolds was able to call out the names of the furniture placed in front of him in the next moment and skillfully find the toys hidden under the table. I'm back. This was a memory that Reynolds had almost forgotten. This was the room where Reynolds lived when he was a child. Moreover, Reynolds, who was standing in front of the mirror, saw the young face. That was him when he was a child. Looking around, frantically looking for the calendar and the alarm clock, and after comparing the time with the days, Reynolds sat by the bed, looking at the familiar room with surprise and disbelief. Am I really back? A new world? Although Reynolds had vowed to reset the world before, after the world was really reset, Reynolds was somewhat at a loss. Ding dong, ding dong. Just as Reynolds quietly destroyed everything in front of him, a loud bell rang. The bell kept echoing in the room, awakening the light in Reynolds' eyes. When Reynolds' eyes became completely bright, Reynolds suddenly jumped up from the bed. "Oh no, Mom!" In the sound of the bell, Reynolds was deeply hurt by the memory that he had almost forgotten. Yes, it was today. In the depths of his memory, Reynolds, who was a child, bumped into his mother's taboo mistake today. This was also the mistake that affected Reynolds' life and led to Reynolds' tragic life. Without any thoughts, Reynolds, who just followed his instincts, pushed open the door and ran toward his mother's room. Hurry up! Hurry up! However, just as Reynolds was about to walk down the stairs, he suddenly stopped. If you're still not satisfied with the world after the reset, what will you do? Do you want to reset it again? Kalinen's words sounded in Reynolds' mind inexplicably. In an instant, an inexplicable fear firmly controlled Reynolds' limbs, making him unable to take even a step forward. Even though Reynolds was a ruthless person who would sacrifice everything to achieve his goals before the world was successfully reset, when he was faced with this world that was very likely to have been successfully reset, and when he was about to see his mother again, Reynolds' instincts of cowardice were awakened. Once again and again, Kalinen's words were like a magic spell that kept ringing in Reynolds' ears. Reynolds' limbs were like lead, and he could not move at all. Click! Suddenly, while Reynolds was sweating profusely and struggling constantly, the door on the first floor opened. Someone is coming. Is it that person? The person who made Mom make a mistake? The person who caused the destruction of Reynolds' family? When the figure that Reynolds resented gradually became clear in Reynolds' mind, a ball of anger suddenly controlled Reynolds' limbs and made him unable to move, and he could no longer control Reynolds' body. Dong, 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 dong. The rapid footsteps were Reynolds' anxiety and fury. However, when Reynolds, who rushed to the first floor like the wind, saw the figure who opened the door clearly, he was surprised to find that the person standing outside the door was not the figure that he had resented for a long time in his memory, but the figure standing in front of him again. Mother and his twin sister, Teresa. Reynolds, you're awake. Seeing Reynolds suddenly rush to the first floor, the woman holding Teresa's hand cried out in surprise. Then, she pondered for a moment and then smiled. Reynolds, you're just in time. Why don't we go shopping together? We don't have much food at home. Can you do Mom a favor? Everything that happened in front of him had deviated from Reynolds' memory, and this deviation also made Reynolds unable to react in time. Driven by instinct, his mother held his hand and left the house with his sister, Teresa, and walked towards the supermarket not far away. Brother, here you are. In a daze, a lollipop appeared in front of Reynolds' eyes. It was Teresa. The twin sister smiled and waved the lollipop in her hand. Here you are, brother. This is Teresa's last lollipop. I'll give it to you. It's delicious. Reynolds, who subconsciously took the lollipop from Teresa's hand, just nodded and then lowered his head to look at the lollipop in his hand. A trace of warmth quietly flowed through Reynolds' heart. Different, completely different. This world is really reset. In his memory, Teresa had never given him a lollipop, but now Teresa gave him a lollipop. These changes made Reynolds' spirit gradually excited. After giving so much, he finally succeeded. The world, it's reset. Feeling the warmth in his mother's hand, Reynolds' cold heart quietly began to melt. Be careful. At this moment, an ear-piercing breaking sound suddenly tore through the noise of the street, and it even brought screams of fear to Reynolds' ears. Rising into the air, that was what Reynolds felt at this moment. Then, in the sight of flying high in the air, Reynolds saw his mother, who was holding Teresa tightly with both hands, being hit hard by a truck that came out of nowhere. Then there was a whirl of dizziness and the sharp pain of falling heavily on the cold ground. However, these didn't affect Reynolds' thinking and actions. Reynolds, who was holding the lollipop given by Teresa tightly in his right hand, crawled up from the ground and rushed crazily to his mother and Teresa, who were knocked more than 20 meters away. "Mom!" That cry from the bottom of his heart finally broke through Reynolds' throat and resounded in this world. However, the woman who should have smiled in return for this fell in a pool of blood, leaving only a man who used his last strength to point at his sister, who was in his arms but was also soaked in blood. No! The ambulance came, but his mother and sister left. The world was reset. The young man was so sure in his heart. However, his mother still left. If you're still not satisfied with the world after the reset, what will you do? Do you want to reset it again? In the red and blue lights of the ambulance, the eyes that had just been melted by warmth were once again shrouded in darkness and covered by coldness. Reset again. No matter how many times, I will successfully reset the world I want. The young man looked to the east, as if he was going to cross endless time and space to look at the mysterious device that was about to be placed on a certain island by those people. Until the young man crossed a long, long time, so long that he had forgotten, and broke through one obstacle after another, so many obstacles that even he couldn't remember. Finally, one day, during the long journey, the young man, who had stopped for a while, sat on a beach and looked at the man and the cat walking toward him. He got up and smiled, welcoming them. "Welcome, night from another world." Chapter 412. Welcome, night from another world. This sentence was Reynolds' opening remark. Moreover, it was to directly point out Ray Minkai's identity as a show of strength. The white cat lying on Ray Minkai's shoulder narrowed its eyes slightly, and a cold light flowed in its golden pupils. It was as if as soon as Ray Minkai sent out a signal, the white cat State Zero would jump up and kill the young man who had seen through Ray Minkai's identity. Ray Minkai gently raised his hand and patted the white cat State Zero's little head, indicating that it should be calm. Then Ray Minkai took out a postcard and threw it casually. The postcard spun through the air and landed on the table next to Reynolds. "Did you ask someone to do this little trick?" What was written on the postcard wasn't anything earth-shattering. It was just an agreed time and place. However, when the postcard appeared in front of Ray Minkai felt a sense of threat. This was personally presented by Chidori and Tokapan Kyoko, who had returned home from school when Ray Minkai was dealing with a group of amalgam traders in the back of the mountain. At first, Chidori, who did not react, only treated it as a gift from a business event. However, the moment Chidori saw the word night printed on the postcard, he immediately realized something. Without saying a word, he immediately dragged Tokapan Kyoko and ran back to the school as fast as he could. He bumped into Ray Minkai, Euphemia, and the others who were preparing to leave the school. Thus, the postcard in Chidori's hand was in Ray Minkai's hands. However, if one were to think of this matter negatively, the inexplicable clown did not hand Chidori a postcard, but a rope. If it was a rope that tied Chidori up, Ray Minkai would not be standing here now. This is just a small trick. There was no need to be so nervous. Sir Knight, I didn't mean to hurt that girl. It's just that, after much consideration, I can only invite you through that girl without being affected in any way. Leonard lowered his gaze and glanced at the postcard on the table. He smiled gently. I don't think that's a trick. Mr. A.G. Ray Minkai patted the head of State Zero, the white cat, and walked towards Leonard. To me, this might be a demonstration, or it might be a challenge. As Ray Minkai approached, the smile on Reynolds' face grew wider. No, Sir Knight. Perhaps you have misunderstood. This was merely an invitation letter. It's just an invitation letter from a kind-hearted person who is full of curiosity and wants to make friends with you. Make friends? Leonard's words made Ray Minkai stop as he snorted coldly. I don't think I'll make any friends with you. Now, the positions of the two sides were almost in a life-and-death situation. Ray Minkai was very clear about Leonard's intentions. However, after arranging for Qian Shanwu to take over the former Mr. Au's forces, it was no longer possible to sit at the same table and talk with Leonard. Is that so? Leonard was not surprised that Ray Minkai refused the invitation without hesitation. On the contrary, Leonard, who was described as omniscient by his subordinate Sabina, had already expected this before this meeting. Then, I wonder if Sir Knight is interested in accompanying me, at least today, this afternoon. Lei Minkai frowned slightly. He didn't know what Leonard was trying to do. According to Ray Minkai's memory, what Leonard should be doing now was trying to persuade him to join his camp and fight together to reset the world. However, the Leonard in front of him was faintly a little abnormal. But Ray Minkai could not see through Leonard's abnormalities in the first place. After pondering for a moment, Ray Minkai nodded. Thank you very much. Then, please come over here, Sir Knight. Leonard took a step back, gave up the chair behind him, and invited him to sit down. Ray Minkai gladly accepted. As the two sat down one after another, a subtle sound of mechanical operation came from not far behind. Ray Minkai turned his head slightly and saw a short-haired, bespectacled woman and two 2-meter-tall miniature AS Avenger slowly walking towards him. In their hands, they were holding tea and snacks. A bunch of junk. Kai, I've told you before. In the previous world, I had seen these pieces of junk and tore them apart. After White Cat State Zero glanced at the Avenger behind the woman, its voice sounded in Ray Minkai's mind. In this regard, Ray Minkai was unmoved and did not say anything. It was not until the woman put the tea and snacks held by the two Avenger on the table one by one, and then left, leaving the space to Leonard and Ray Minkai, that Leonard pointed at the woman in the distance. She is Sabina, my subordinate. Sabina. She was the woman who had extraordinary feelings for Leonard. Sabina. A very good subordinate. Thank you for the compliment. No matter what difficulties I encounter, no matter where I am, Sabina will always appear by my side in time. Leonard suddenly sighed, which surprised Ray Minkai a little. The scene in front of him was once again separated from Ray Minkai's memory. In just a short time, Leonard's behavior and words were somewhat different from the Leonard in Ray Minkai's memory. Now is not the time to talk about this. Sir Knight, do you believe that there are other worlds outside this world? Oh no. In the middle of his sentence, Reynolds denied his own words. I'm very sorry, Sir Knight. That's not what I meant. But at this time, Ray Minkai spoke first. Leonard, let's not beat around the bush. Are you talking about resetting the world? The abnormality exuded from Leonard made Ray Minkai's nerves more and more tense. This was different from the previous Kineas. The feeling brought by the abnormality was difficult to describe. Yes. Our goal is to reset this world and let the world return to its original beauty. Leonard was not surprised that Ray Minkai pointed out his ultimate goal. Instead, he readily admitted the ultimate goal of his side. Is that so? Do you think the world after the reset is really as beautiful as you imagined it to be? Ray Minkai countered on the spot. Furthermore, what he said made Leonard slightly stunned. Then, Leonard, who quickly woke up, suddenly laughed. That's right. Even I can't guarantee that the world, after we reset, it will be as beautiful as we imagined it to be. Leonard seemed to sigh, and then he looked at Ray Minkai and said, but because of this, we stop and no longer move forward. Ray Minkai did not respond. Leonard continued, no, that won't happen. Even if the world, after resetting, will not be as beautiful as I imagined. We still have the last resort to save all of this. Sir Knight, maybe you don't know, but a long time ago, someone said the same thing to me just now, but it's a pity. Leonard's eyes gradually moved and collided with Ray Minkai's eyes. Vaguely, two murderous auras burst out in midair and frantically strangled each other. In the increasingly cold air, Leonard's voice sounded faintly. Unfortunately, in the end, that person was killed by me. Then, Ray Minkai refuted. But you can't kill me now. Hearing this, Leonard suddenly smiled. That's true. I can't kill you. While speaking, Leonard's eyes seemed to turn to the white cat, state 0. In the depths of his eyes, there was a vigilance that could not be extinguished. But I can trap you. Sir Knight. Your actions now. I've seen them all. Do you think that you can just rely on a mere substitute to take away that person's power and wealth? Don't underestimate people. I'm not underestimating anyone. Leonard, I'm not underestimating you. Lei Minkai stood up and took 2 steps forward. With his back facing Reynolds, he slowly said, "You're right. Leonard, if that's your only intention today, perhaps our conversation has come to an end." Miss Q. Lei Minkai's showdown ushered in Leonard's hidden card. What is this? Leonard, you want to use Miss Q to make a deal? Lei Minkai turned around and looked at Leonard. No, Sir Knight. Miss Q is a respectable lady. The reason why I mention her is because I want you to understand that here, you, Mississippi Q, and that Mr. J's identity is not a secret. Showdown. Leonard began to show his cards. Sir Knight, I wonder what kind of beautiful scenery there is in your world. It's a beautiful scenery that can't help but recall even if you're far away from home. Lei Minkai replied. Although this was not a poetic description, Reynolds still sighed. Is it? Sir Knight, what do you think of the scenery in front of you? Hee. For me, this is just a picture that occasionally changes a little. Leonard's words seemed to be sighing, but also seemed to be narrating. In that memory that I can't remember how long it was, I saw storms at the ends of the earth, and I also saw the sea of fire that spread across the whole continent. Above the sea of sand, I saw the vast yellow sand covered by green, and the mysterious oasis that was praised by the world was restored. Even so, these sceneries that may only exist in legends are nothing more than photos buried deep in my memory to the current me. Amidst the sighing, Lei Minkai remained silent. Although this was just a somewhat poetic exclamation, Lei Minkai faintly felt that this should be the source of why Leonard in front of him made him feel unusual. Sir Knight, perhaps one day in the future, if there's a chance, I want to see with my own eyes how beautiful the scenery of your hometown is. Hee. Lei Minkai smiled. If Sir Leonard is willing, maybe I can fulfill your wish now. But before that, I hope Sir Leonard can hand over the amalgam, Mississippi Q and Mr. J. In this way, I may be able to let Sir Leonard see a more spectacular scenery. Is that so? That's really exciting, Leonard said from the bottom of his heart. However, all of a sudden, Leonard's face turned icy cold. But it's too late. Sir Knight, compared to your existence, I want to turn the world into what I want it to be. The world won't go in the direction you want it to go, Leonard. But I can let the world reset its steps when it goes astray. Lei Minkai sneered, and there was a trace of ridicule in his smile. Astray? The world doesn't go as you want it to, so you reset it. Don't you think this is arrogance? Leonard, arrogance? This is the first time someone said this to me. Hee. Leonard also sneered in the face of Lei Minkai's ridicule. Arrogance. To me, and even to the people in this world, you are also arrogant, aren't you? Knight, Lei Minkai. From the moment you appeared in this world, the direction of Mithril changed. Leonard's words made Lei Minkai's heart go on alert. The direction of Mithril changed. Perhaps this was not a special remark, but for Lei Minkai, who was familiar with the plot, it was a bolt from the blue. This bolt from the blue not only shocked Lei Minkai, but also dispelled the fog he felt since he saw Leonard. Reset the world. The Leonard in front of him was not the Leonard in Lei Minkai's memory, but the Leonard who had successfully reset the world more than a few times before Lei Minkai and even Miss Q entered this world. In other words, the Leonard in front of him was already a transmigrator like Lei Minkai to a certain extent. Moreover, according to Star City's understanding and knowledge of the Abyss, the Leonard in front of him was probably an existence called a space-time singularity. Lei Minkai's expression was very calm, without the slightest fluctuation of emotions. But his mind was running frantically, quickly connecting the information he got from Ray before he set off, and finally came to the final answer. Leonard Testarossa. The reason why the young man in front of him exuded an indescribable strangeness was probably the result of him successfully resetting more than a few worlds. Thinking back carefully, Ray Minkai had a similar feeling before he came to this world. It was just that at that time, Ray Minkai did not pay much attention to this strange feeling, but it was not until he met Leonard that Ray Minkai recalled the strangeness of this feeling. It was a strange space-time feeling that a person would have after layers of superposition. And the person who once exuded the same strangeness was Lou Lucio, who had been missing for a long time. That's right, Leonard is a space-time singularity. Chapter 4:13. Roar. White Cat State Zero suddenly let out a loud roar and jumped down from Ray Minkai's shoulder. In the blink of an eye, the cute little white cat disappeared and was replaced by a steel lion that was 3 meters tall and more than 5 meters long. It was covered in white and ferocious armor and carried a large sword that was almost 5 meters long on its back. "Sir Reynolds, please be careful." State Zero's roar startled Sabina, who was hiding not far away. She was worried about Reynolds' safety and led the two Avengers to Reynolds' side without hesitation. She looked at the steel lion that suddenly appeared with caution. Huge, fierce. Sabina's nerves were stretched taut by the cold glint reflected by the large sword in his hand. She knew that once the large sword was swung, even if Reynolds could survive under the protection of the two mini-Avengers, he would have to pay a price. This was unacceptable to Sabina, who placed Reynolds' life at a higher level than her own. However, just as Sabina subconsciously reached for the headset, Reynolds' hand patted her shoulder. "Don't be impatient, Sabina." Reynolds did not show the same vigilance as Sabina when he faced the steel lion that State Zero had transformed into. Instead, the smile on his face was still as relaxed as before. "It seems that we can't form a friendship between us. Your Excellency Knight." Reynolds' gaze paused on the steel lion for a moment. Then he looked past the huge body and stared at Ray Minkai. "I said from the beginning that there is no possibility of forming a friendship between us." "Reynolds." Ray Minkai's answer was still the same. "Is that so? Then I'm sorry." Reynolds sighed and turned to leave. "Everyone, attack." Reynolds' turn was undoubtedly a signal for Sabina, whether it was to follow Reynolds' orders or for Reynolds' safety. As long as Reynolds lost interest in something, Sabina would not hesitate to kill him. Da-da-da-da. In an instant, gunshots rang out. Those tongues of flame were of different lengths. The storm-like barrage suddenly enveloped the steel lion and Ray Minkai, as if they would be torn apart in the next moment. This momentum, this formation, it was not a powerful attack that could be created by just relying on two mini-AS Avengers. Amidst the flickering flames, bursts of distorted light quietly faded away, revealing a familiar-looking mecha with a whip behind its head. It was the King of Hell. It turned out that Reynolds had hidden a team of Hell Monarchs nearby from the very beginning. That was why he had the confidence to say that he could trap Ray Minkai. Da-da-da-da. The machine gun in the hands of the Hell King crazily spat out terrifying flames, pouring bullets from the magazine towards the Steel Lion and Ray Minkai. It wasn't to kill the Steel Lion and Ray Minkai, but to restrict their movements. This was the task that Reynolds had specifically instructed at the beginning of this meeting. Sabina, and even the pilots who were piloting the Hell King, couldn't understand this task, because in their opinion, no matter how powerful that extremely strange Steel Lion was, it wouldn't be able to escape from the hands of a team of Hell Lords. After all, in the eyes of these pilots who had been piloting the Hell King for a long time, the existence of the Hell King was undoubtedly invincible. Even if the long-rumored Mithril had begun to be used, and the ASDAT also used the Lambda Drive system, it couldn't make the Amalgam pilots feel much threat. The gunshots tore through the air, and a harsh smell of gunpowder filled the surroundings. Looking at the target that was drowned in barrage, Sabina took a step back, then turned around and followed Reynolds, ready to leave this place. The rest would be left to the Hell King team and the two mini-AS Avengers to handle. Originally, this was how things were arranged. However, the world always likes to surprise you when you think that things have been arranged perfectly for your plan. "Reynolds, do you only have these means? You won't be able to stop me with just these lousy machines." As these words were spoken, a roar followed closely behind. Roar! The loud lion's roar instantly suppressed the gunshots that tore through the air. Then a layer of arc-shaped light shield followed the lion's roar and quickly spread out from the position where the steel lion and Ray Minkai were, blocking the storm-like barrage until the Hell King pilots who were stunned by the scene in front of them stopped attacking. Moreover, the system program that controlled the two mini-AS Avengers that participated in the siege suddenly sounded an alarm at the moment when the light shield appeared. It judged that the steel lion had a fatal threat and retreated again and again. It gathered around Reynold, who had not gone far, and put on a posture of protecting Reynold. "Sir Reynold." The changes on the field made Sabina's heart skip a beat, and her whole body tensed up. "Don't panic, Sabina." Just like before, Reynold just raised his hand slightly to signal Sabina to calm down and turn back to look at the field again. "Is this the power of the world where you came from, Sir Knight?" Whoosh! A gust of wind moved silently, rolling up bursts of sand and dust. After forming a cyclone above the steel lion, the sand and dust rolled up by it scattered, blocking the sight of Reynold and the others. "If you think so, then so be it." In the sand and dust, Ray Minkai's voice sounded at the same time. The giant claw that was bigger than the torso of the Hell King tore the scattered sand and dust apart. Amidst the rustling sound of sand falling on the cold steel armor, the giant steel lion that was bigger and more terrifying than the one that appeared in front of Reynold and the others just now walked out of the sand and dust. Roar! This was a terrifying roar. Just by looking at it, the ferocious head that was bigger than the Hell King was already a great visual impact. What's more, on the back of this larger steel lion, there were two larger and longer longswords. Shashasha. Amidst the scattered sand and dust, the two longswords cut through the curtain of sand and dust without any hindrance, reflecting the cold and piercing sword light in the eyes of everyone present. Long-fanged lion. Looking at this ferocious and terrifying steel lion, Reynolds' eyes narrowed slightly. This was the information that Miss Q had told him before the meeting began, even though he already knew the true form of the White Cat Zero in advance. After witnessing the transformation of the small and cute cat body into a steel lion that was far bigger than the Hell King, Reynolds realized that even though he did not know how many times he had reset the world, there were still areas that he had never come into contact with and were extremely unfamiliar with. Attack! Attack! Reynolds did not respond, but Sabina still maintained her calmness. The moment the momentary shock subsided, Sabina gave the order to attack again. Gunshots sounded again, but this time the gunshots were interrupted. Roar! The lion's roar sounded almost at the same time as the gunshots. However, the moment the gunshots were interrupted, the long-fanged Lion Zero turned into a stream of light and rushed to the front of the Hell King closest to Reynolds in the blink of an eye and raised its claws. Buzz! The Hell King's reaction was not slow. The moment the long-fanged Lion Zero's hill-like figure shrouded it, it raised its hand to activate its own Lambda drive system screen. However, even if the Lambda drive system screen allowed the Hell King to escape from the instant threat of death, it was still unable to move the Grim Reaper's scythe away from the pilot's neck. Lambda drive system? The moment the cold ridicule sounded from the long-fanged Lion Zero's terrifying mouth, the same brilliance and the same feeling suddenly burst out from the long-fanged Lion Zero's giant claws that pressed down on the Hell King's head. Gotcha! Suddenly, the sound of something being broken tore through the air. It was not that something was broken. It was that the Hell King's attempt to use the Lambda drive system screen to block the long-fanged Lion Zero's attack failed. The price of failure was that the King of Hell, who had always relied on his outstanding performance to kill others, was instantly torn apart under the pressure of the gigantic claw. All that was left of him was fragments scattered all over the ground. Da-da-da-da! The gunshots sounded again. When the other two Hell Kings saw their teammates being smashed into pieces by the long-fanged Lion Zero's attack, their eyes suddenly turned red and launched a crazy attack. In order for the amalgam to be able to exert the power of the Hell King's lambda drive system, most of the pilots have various mental biases. In their view, only these pilots with mental biases can successfully activate the power of the lambda drive system in a certain extreme mental state and use this power smoothly. Therefore, when they witness their teammates dying tragically under the long-fanged Lion Zero's claws, their mental state, which was already in an extreme state, instantly broke through the peak and entered a more crazy state. In this crazy state, the remaining two Hell Kings no longer cared about the coordination of the formation and firepower. In the minds of the two Hell King pilots, there was only one thought left: kill the giant beast in front of them. Driven by this crazy thought, the two Hell Kings threw away the machine guns in their hands that had already emptied the magazines, and turned to take down the long sword and spear hanging on their backs and waist, and rushed towards the long-fanged Lion Zero from the left and right. "Sir Reynolds, take advantage of this. Let's go." Sabina had witnessed the terrifying scene of the long-fanged lion's State Zero crushing the King of Hell that had activated the lambda drive system in an instant. Therefore, when she saw the remaining Kings of Hell going crazy, she immediately made the decision to evacuate with Reynolds. Reynolds did not hesitate. He quickly chanted a few codes and let the mini AS Avenger in front of him rush forward to join the battle. Then, under the protection of Sabina, he decisively left this place quickly. Kai, that silver-haired brat is gone. In the long-fanged Lion Zero's cockpit, the voice of the long-fanged Lion Zero sounded very anxious. "No, let's deal with the enemy in front of us first." Ray Minkai also knew about Reynolds' departure. However, Ray Minkai knew that Reynolds was able to say that they were trapped, so he probably did not only arrange these forces. Although a small team of Hell Kings could destroy Mithril, they could not kill the long-fanged Lion Zero. Roar! For the situation in front of them, Ray Minkai remained cautious, but the long-fanged Lion Zero would not be as cautious as Ray Minkai. Since Ray Minkai only reminded them to pay attention to the changes in the surroundings, it meant that the long-fanged Lion Zero did not need to worry about what the remaining Hell Kings would do in the dark. Even if the two Mini AS Avenger were not worth mentioning at all, the same was true for the Mini AS Avenger that was rushing towards them. Clang! A sharp sword hum rang out. The two long swords on the back of the long-fanged Lion Zero broke through the air and slashed towards the Hell Kings that were waving their long swords and spears at lightning speed. Bang! Bang! In the blink of an eye, two crisp sounds of metal breaking rang out, and the two Hell Kings that were attacking the long-fanged Lion Zero suddenly flew out. Moreover, before the pilots of the two Hell Kings could adjust the balance of the body in time, the blade with the unique brilliance of the lambda drive system broke through the air and slashed the two Hell Kings that were still in mid-air without any hindrance. Go away! As soon as the long-fanged Lion Zero landed, there was a hint of annoyance in the voice of the long-fanged Lion Zero. It turned out that under Reynolds' command, the two Mini AS Avenger that rushed over took advantage of the moment when the long-fanged Lion Zero cut the remaining Hell Kings into two halves and rushed to the landing point of the long-fanged Lion Zero and posed as if they wanted to jump on the giant claws of the long-fanged Lion Zero. Seeing this, the long-fanged Lion Zero naturally would not let them succeed. Two golden lights flashed, and the two Avenger flew out on the spot, hitting the coconut tree not far away. And after rolling for a few weeks on the sea, they exploded amidst the splashing water. Boom! Towering splashes, and the coconut tree that was blown apart. It was all telling Ray Minkai that if the long-fanged Lion Zero had not slapped the two Avenger away in annoyance, the long-fanged Lion Zero would have been caught off guard. TSK, you only know how to play these little tricks all day long. The disdainful voice of the long-fanged Lion Zero sounded in Ray Minkai's ears. The long-fanged Lion Zero. He's here. At this time, Ray Minkai's voice became dignified. He faintly felt from the beginning of the battle that the long-fanged Lion Zero had finally blocked the long-fanged Lion Zero's pursuit of Reynolds after the Hell King team, and the Avenger failed to self-destruct. Long time no see. Little kitty that ruined my good thing. In front of him, There was a one-eyed, mysterious body with a trace of Zago bloodline in the outline of its body. However, the voice that came from this body made Rei Minkai's heart alert. Miss, Q roar. When enemies meet, their eyes turn red. If Rei Minkai had not grasped the control of the body at the first moment, the long-fanged Lion Zero would have rushed up and torn the body in front of him apart. Are you the one that trapped us in Reynolds' words? Mississippi Q. Rei Minkai's hands held the joystick tightly, not giving the long-fanged Lion Zero a chance to control the body. Yes and no. This is just a greeting. Cute and pitiful kitty. Let me see your struggle again. It's just like the struggle that destroyed your world back then. Roar. At the mention of the broken hometown, the angry long-fanged Lion Zero finally broke free from Rei Minkai's control and rushed over crazily. However, the long-fanged Lion Zero's indestructible sharp claws did not touch anything and directly pierced through the mysterious body. In the next second, this mysterious and strange body shattered into pieces and disappeared in midair. Kai, go and find that damned woman. She must not have gone far. The long-fanged Lion Zero continued to run around the area crazily, vowing to find Miss. Q no. Long-fanged Lion Zero. Calm down. They have already left. Rei Minkai held the joystick tightly with both hands and stopped the long-fanged Lion Zero's movements. This is the challenge for the final battle. Long-fanged Lion Zero, the next battle will be a life and death battle. Chapter 414. When something they had once dreamed of was placed in front of them, perhaps many people would find it hard to believe, and thus become restrained, for fear that their momentary actions would destroy the beauty of this dream that might be an illusion. Mallory's current appearance was just like that. It had been almost a week since Rei Minkai had been invited to meet with Reynolds, and a battle that was tantamount to a declaration of war had taken place. During this week, Mithril, which had completely abandoned its previous cautious attitude, attacked everywhere with the support from Avalon. In particular, with the help of the Lionheart Knight, who had the ability to fly on his own, they were able to capture many of the amalgam forces that had not yet fallen under Qian Shanwu's control in a short period of time and incorporate them one by one. This progress made Mallory, who had vowed to revive his father's long-cherished wish, feel that it was unreal for a while. It was too fast. It was really too fast. He did not expect that Mithril, which he had put in so much effort to establish, would be able to fulfill this long-cherished wish while he was still alive. Even though Avalon's contribution was also extremely eye-catching. Has the final battle finally come? It's too fast. The faster Mallory's father regained the lost territory of the amalgam, the more urgent Mallory's heart was. This was because he knew that during this week, when the original tug-of-war had turned into a one-sided battle, it meant that the enemy intended to retreat and use space to exchange for time, so that the limited power at hand could be trained into a killing move that was enough to kill Mithril, which seemed to have gained a great advantage of the moment. Isn't this even better? The more time drags on, the more advantageous it is for us. Reynolds is not a fool. Sitting across from Mallory was Rei Minkai. During this week, Mithril and Avalon had joined forces to attack everywhere. But as the top combatant of both sides, Rei Minkai did not participate in this operation. As mentioned above, Rei Minkai was certain that Reynolds was using space to exchange for time after the battle that was tantamount to a declaration of war, so as to obtain as much power as possible that could allow him to condense more power than before. Therefore, Rei Minkai no longer made a move. He allowed the SRT team, which had become more and more proficient in using the Lambda Drive system, to use this week's intense battles to hone their control of the Lambda Drive system and their skills, so as to achieve the strength to face the King of Hell head-on. From the battle reports that Teresa had personally compiled, Melissa, Cruz, and Sosuke, Xiangliang truly had the halo of a main character above their heads. Under Rei Minkai's deliberate guidance, the three of them had erupted with extremely high talent. Using the enormous pressure brought about by a short period of time, which was enough to send a normal person to the hospital. As motivation, they quickly completed the requirements set by Ray Minkai. This was also one of Mallory's trump cards in the final battle. Although this is the case, we also lack time. Compared to Reynolds, whose forces have been compressed to the extreme by us, our forces can't be taken into account. After all, the amalgam is too big. Even I, the executive officer of the amalgam, didn't know that the amalgam was so big. Mallory thought of the various problems brought about by the rapid capture of the sphere of influence during the week and could not help but sigh. Even after Mallory had accepted that he could no longer control the fate of the amalgam, he had turned to building mithril and nurturing many talents who would listen to his orders and follow his commands. He had never imagined that there would be a day when his dream would be so intense. Are we short on manpower? Ray Minkai had also heard of the dilemma that Mallory was facing, but he did not have a better solution. After all, on Ray Minkai's side, only everyone on the floating battleship of Avalon could be directly mobilized. Therefore, being able to spare the Lionheart Knight Regiment to support Mithril's capture of the amalgam was already the limit. Yes, that is indeed the case. But Sir Knight Captain, you don't have to worry. Although we are a little short on manpower, we can still handle it. The most important thing for us now is to figure out how to deal with the upcoming final battle. Mallory shook his head and did not intend to continue on the issue of insufficient manpower. To him, the most urgent thing should be the upcoming final battle. If they were defeated by Reynolds in this final battle, then, no matter how well they handled the current forces and territories, it would be nothing more than an illusion. Yes, but now, a portion of our manpower has been spread out. Looking at it from another perspective, these spread-out manpower may be a very good appetizer for Reynolds. Ray Minkai knew that the final battle was imminent, but he also knew that the manpower that Mallory had sent out in order to organize the current spoils of war occupied almost all of Mallory's talent pool. Then we'll have to see if Reynolds has the ability to eat all of my men. In response to Ray Minkai's reminder, Mallory just snorted coldly. In order to nurture these talents, not only did Mallory arrange a comprehensive and efficient curriculum, but he also set up many challenges with extremely strict requirements. Half of it was forcing and half of it was asking the elites to pass these challenges. Therefore, Mallory wasn't too worried about the possibility of being attacked. In this regard, Ray Minkai just nodded and no longer reminded him. Then, the next topic is the device located in the underground of the Mithril headquarters. Now, Sarah, perhaps we ought to be open and honest. From Reynolds' words and deeds, his purpose is not to destroy Mithril, but to take the device stored in the underground of the headquarters, Tartaros, for his own, and to reset the world. These words made Mallory suddenly stand up, and the expression on his face was even more shocked. Tartaros, the existence of this mysterious device with the ability to reset the world. Even among Mithril, not many people knew about it. But even so, Ray Minkai could say this mysterious name and the terrible power it possessed. How could this not shock Mallory? In Mallory's mind, the existence of this mysterious device might be the ultimate trump card. But he never thought that not only Ray Minkai, but also Reynolds, the enemy, had already known about the existence of Tartaros. The latter even targeted Tartaros in an attempt to use its terrible power to reset the world. How is it possible? Reynolds' ambition is so terrible. This was the first time Mallory knew about Reynolds' ambition hidden in the endless darkness. Nothing is impossible. Mallory, I believe you should know about Reynolds' childhood, right? Think about it carefully. Maybe you can understand why Reynolds has such terrible ambition. Ray Minkai said lightly. He believed that even if Mallory did not have much friendship with Reynolds and Teresa's father, he could learn all the details from Jerome, the current commander of Mithril's operations headquarters. Ray Minkai's reminder made Mallory fall into silence for a while. As expected, Mallory knew about Reynolds and Teresa's childhood experiences. That's really a disaster. After a long silence, the many frustrations and regrets in his heart finally turned into a sigh. Then, Mallory's gaze gradually became firm. Although this is very regrettable, the current situation has reached a point of no return. And There's no possibility of reconciliation between us after Tartaros is targeted by Reynolds. Mallory took a slow breath, calmed his emotions, and looked up at Ray Minkai. Sir Knight, what are your plans next? Well, maybe I should entrust the defense of Merida Island to Sir Knight. Is that okay? Although Ray Minkai had participated in the battle on the Son of Dan Slave before, for many Mithril personnel, Ray Minkai was just a stranger outside the staff. No, there's no problem. Mithril is not the barbaric amalgam. The strength that Sir Knight Commander had displayed in the previous battle was enough to convince most of the people in Mithril. Therefore, it is only right that we entrust the defense of Merida Island to you, Sir Knight. Mallory's attitude was very firm. This was not a difficult task for Ray Minkai. On the contrary, after Ray Minkai received Mallory's promise, he could not help but secretly breathe a sigh of relief. It was nothing more than a blessing to be able to take control of the defense of Merida Island before the final battle. What made Ray Minkai feel even more fortunate was that the control was not proposed by him, but by Mallory himself. For Ray Minkai, this was a guarantee that he could smoothly take over all the defense forces on Merida Island, and also avoid the possibility of conflict with the Mithril forces stationed on Merida Island. Thank you, Earl Mallory. After Ray Minkai thanked him from the bottom of his heart, he reached for the teacup on the table and bowed to Mallory. Here, I propose a toast to Earl Mallory with tea in place of wine. Haha, that's what I want to say. Sir Knight, thank you for coming. Because of your arrival, I can see the dawn of realizing my father's long-cherished wish. Yes, there was a soft sound of glasses clinking. He drank it in one gulp. From now on, Mithril and Avalon became true allies in the sense of the word, facing the final battle together. Half an hour later, Mallory left, and Ray Minkai came to Neku. During this week, Neku and Avalon was always in a state of frenzy. In addition to constantly throwing Lionheart Knights into the battlefield, a special area was also designated in the depths of Neku. The purpose was to use the fastest speed to perfect the modification of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword, according to the combat data obtained from Ray Minkai's many times of piloting. After a week of hard work, the development team, led by Royd and Mira, finally pushed the first stage of the modification of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword to the end. Buzz buzz. The gantry crane, moving along the track, slowly moved the last piece of armor to the front of the right shoulder of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword, and under the guidance of the surrounding technicians, the final installation process was completed. It's done. Thank you for your hard work, everyone. The moment the gantry crane stopped, Royd, whose eyes were a little dark, suddenly clapped his hands and cheered loudly. In an instant, this area that was specially designated for the modification of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword was filled with cheers. Well done. Thank you for your hard work, everyone. At this time, Ray Minkai's voice suddenly sounded, causing everyone's cheers to pause, but then an even louder cheer swept over. Sir Knight, please look. This is the crystallization of our hard work during this period of time. The real Roaring Flame Demon Sword. Roy jumped in front of Ray Minkai in 3 steps and pointed at the brand new Roaring Flame Demon Sword and said loudly. As usual, the main color was silver white, accompanied by the gorgeous painting style of the royal family's coat of arms, which made Ray Minkai frown a little. This was the usual style of the body development technicians from the Britannia Empire. Perhaps this was also their common aesthetic. In their eyes, as a machine with a respected position, or even as a future prince of the Britannia Empire, it was impossible to use a low-key and plain painting. As expected, it's still like this? Regarding this problem, Ray Minkai had raised many opinions. It seemed that this group of technicians was still quite stubborn. Fortunately, except for the slightly flamboyant painting style, the technical team led by Royd and Mira perfectly fulfilled Ray Minkai's request for the other parts. First of all, as the Roaring Flame Demon Sword, which was built with the KFM body as the main technology, naturally did not lack weapons such as radiation shields and hooks. Moreover, after these conventional equipment, the Roaring Flame Demon Sword was equipped with a readjusted light wing system. When the output of this new light-wing system reached a certain upper limit, it could use the excess energy in the form of energy beams to launch a storm-like attack. In this regard, it was not much different from the original Lancelot. But don't forget, the light-wing system of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword could not only provide flight ability and energy beam attack, but it could also collect the heat emitted when the lambda drive system was used, and after reaching a certain threshold, it could be used in the form of an instant explosion to hit the target. Flame surfing. That was the name of this move. It was funny to say it. The discovery of this move was also quite coincidental. At that time, Rei Minkai was cooperating with Mira to test the limits of the heat dissipation of the Lightwing system. For some reason, when the lambda drive system was fully activated and pushed the body temperature to the extreme, the lambda drive system, which was originally under the control of Rei Minkai, suddenly went berserk. The temperature of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword body also soared rapidly. In order to control the situation in time and to suppress the lambda drive system from going berserk, Rei Minkai and Mira immediately took action. Then, an accident suddenly happened before Rei Minkai and Mira could fully launch a self-rescue operation. While Rei Minkai was still trying to control the lambda drive system, the energy emitted by the lambda drive system suddenly swept away the heat on the light wing and poured all in front of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword. Suddenly, the forest in front of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword was destroyed by the terrifying heat wave. In the distorted light, the forest in front of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword no longer existed, leaving behind a burning ground that seemed to have been burned by the flames of hell. Perhaps, from this moment on, the name of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword was worthy of its name. Chapter 415. Brother. The Fiery Demon Sword's heat dissipation system has completed the final test. That move can basically be stabilized. This time, by accident, caused the Fiery Demon Sword to have an unexpected attack method. For Rei Minkai, this was indeed an unexpected surprise. According to Myra's analysis after the event, this might be because the lambda drive system on the Fiery Demon Sword reacted to Rei Minkai's intense spiritual fluctuations when he wanted to take measures to stop the body from overheating. Thus, it led to some kind of physical phenomenon that could not be explained at the moment. This might not be a complete analysis, and could only be regarded as a speculation. But for now, this might already be the explanation for why the Fiery Demon Sword was able to instantly explode with intense heat that was enough to cause the body to crash after that accident. Rei Minkai did not care about this point. As a pilot, he cared about whether this killing weapon that was born from an accident could be transformed into a permanent equipment for the Fiery Demon Sword. Obviously, Mira did not disappoint Rei Minkai. This girl, who wholeheartedly developed a new body for Rei Minkai, had devoted all her mind and energy to the development and modification of the Fiery Demon Sword during this period of time. Behind every surprise was the result of Myra's painstaking efforts. Well done. Thank you, Mira. Rei Minkai stood on the elevator and sincerely thanked Mira, who looked a little tired. No, this is what I should do. Mira shook her head, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and her eyebrows were brimming with satisfaction. Myra's wish was very simple. As long as she could help Rei Minkai, Mira would do it without hesitation. Once upon a time, when Mira was still in the research institute, surrounded by many demons, and was subjected to cruel experiments, enduring pain that ordinary people could not imagine, perhaps she also had feelings of hatred for the whisper talent she possessed. But now, Mira was glad that she had the talent of a whisperer. It was to be able to design and create a body that could make Rei Minkai invincible on the battlefield. Welcome back, Your Excellency Knight. Under Myra's gaze, Rei Minkai, who entered the cockpit of the Fiery Demon Sword, was greeted by Al's welcoming words. Al, report the status. Rei Minkai nodded slightly and let Al report the current status of the Fiery Demon Sword. Yes, according to the progress plan of Count Royd and Miss Mira for this week, I have now completed the first stage of the transformation project. In the voice, a small screen on Rei Minkai's right. What was displayed on it was the technical modifications that the Raging Flame Demon Sword had completed during this period of time. The Fiery Demon Sword's power system. The power system. According to Count Royd's concept of high compatibility at the beginning of the design, after the Fiery Demon Sword completed its first combat test, it began to upgrade and replace the power system according to the power system transformation plan jointly formulated by Count Royd and Miss Mira. The most noteworthy part of this plan is the four limbs driving method of the Fiery Demon Sword, from the original mechanical transmission structure used by the standard pilots of the Britannia Empire to the unique electromagnetic muscle structure of the AS. According to speculation, the current Fiery Demon Sword can burst out more than 10 times the power of the original mechanical transmission structure in an instant. Oh, Ray Minkai was not surprised that the transmission structure of the Fiery Demon Sword was replaced with electromagnetic muscle. But according to what AL said, it could burst out more than 10 times the power of the original mechanical transmission structure. This was a bit surprising. However, recalling that among the many bodies of the AS series, even a model barbarian who was beaten up had a maximum speed of 120 kilometers per hour. To be able to achieve such an amazing speed, it was indispensable to the electromagnetic muscle's credit. Ray Minkai's surprise in his heart faded a lot. Al, can you simulate the maximum speed that the Fiery Demon Sword can reach when it is fully mobile? In his mind, recalling the data about the maximum speed of mini AS, Ray Minkai asked casually. In the next second, a group of simulation data appeared on the small screen, as well as a high-speed maneuver simulation demonstration video calculated by the rendering engine in real time. In this real-time calculation video, the simple model representing the Fiery Demon Sword could achieve flexible and fast maneuvers on flat ground, hills, and even in complex mountain forest environments. Especially on flat land, the speed of the Fiery Demon Sword almost reached an amazing index. 280 kilometers per hour? This is not much different from the original Fiery Demon Sword. Ray Minkai looked at the conclusion on the screen and fell into deep thought. However, this conclusion was not unexpected. After all, compared to the original Fiery Demon Sword, the current Fiery Demon Sword was not only doubled in size, but it also meant that the weight of the body would also increase with the increase of the body's rules. Although such a design could allow the body to obtain more equipment points and increase the adaptability of weapons, the increase in weight could not be ignored. Even if the current Fiery Demon Sword used the power system built by Cherry Stone's new nuclear fusion reactor, it would still be affected by the factor of weight that could not be ignored. Although this was the case, after weighing the pros and cons, Ray Minkai also approved of Myra's modification plan. Although the maximum speed of the current Fiery Demon Sword on land was not much different from the original Fiery Demon Sword, it had an ability that the original Fiery Demon Sword did not have. That was the light wing system. In front of the combat power increase brought by autonomous flight, the fastest speed was just a little brother. What about the weapons? Ray Minkai, who had made the conclusion, spoke again. Yes. Now, according to the results of Sir Knight's actual combat test, the most suitable weapons for Sir Knight to use are the 165mm howitzer, the Fire God Cannon X2, the Hook Claw X4, the Radiation Vibration Sword X2. There were not many changes to the conventional equipment of the Fiery Demon Sword. The only thing worth Ray Minkai's attention was that Royd seemed to have transplanted the Radiation Vibration Sword used by Lancelot onto the Fiery Demon Sword. This was undoubtedly good news for Ray Minkai, who fought close-range combat from time to time. In addition, Ray Minkai's attention was more on the Fiery Demon Sword shoulders and the 4 additional points on the back. From the specifications, this did not seem to be the equipment points used by conventional weapons. Sir Knight, this is the mounting point of the new detachable auxiliary mechanical arm of the Fiery Demon Sword. According to Earl Royd's multi-purpose tactical concept in complex environments, the Fiery Demon Sword can be equipped with a maximum of 4 to 6 auxiliary mechanical arms to increase a considerable amount of equipment and increase the upper limit of the body's firepower in a short period of time. or in some specific complex combat environments. It can use a physical shield and install a one-time radiation energy shield to increase the body's defense. As soon as the doubt appeared on Kai's face, AL responded, "Oh, the mounting point of the auxiliary mechanical arm? Royd actually thought of this?" As soon as he heard that this was the mounting point of the auxiliary mechanical arm, Kai was a little surprised. He didn't expect Royd to have this kind of bold design thinking. Presumably, when this guy was playing with Copperfield, he had played with the auxiliary mechanical arm for a while. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have thought of the auxiliary mechanical arm in a short period of time, which was both simple and convenient to increase the body's combat performance in a short period of time. In the end, Kai's gaze fell on the last line of names on the weapon list. SL-01, Sword in the Lake, Beam Prototype Rifle. SL, Sir Lancelot. He even named it after the sword in the lake. Royd's heart is really big. It was not difficult to guess the meaning of the simple English abbreviations. Especially after combining the words behind the abbreviations, Kai's eyebrows slightly furrowed, but they relaxed again. According to the legend, Lancelot did indeed have the sword in the lake, but after many hesitations, he was unable to return it to the lake fairy. It was not until the king died that Lancelot returned the sword in the lake to the lake fairy. Perhaps this story, in Royd's eyes, was similar to the unfinished product of the beam rifle obtained from the warehouse of the Research Institute. Thinking of this, Kai suddenly shook his head. No matter how he thought, he probably couldn't keep up with Royd's thinking. After dispelling the slightly scattered thoughts, Kai put his attention back on the sword in the lake beam rifle. This weapon hasn't been tested yet? Kai found that other than power and other related data, there was no other combat data that should be listed. Definitely. Sir Knight, the SL-01 sword in the lake is still in the laboratory stage and has not reached the relevant standards for actual combat. What you see now is the most perfect state of equipment that can be used in the flaming demonic sword plan. AL gave an answer that was not surprising. After all, it had only been half a month since the unfinished product of the beam rifle was found in the warehouse of the Research Institute. No matter how powerful Royd's technology was, he would still face the lack of weapons development equipment on Avalon, which would lead to the inability to achieve satisfactory results in the shortest time possible. I see. So, other than the sword in the lake, all other equipment can be used normally? Kai finally gave up the idea of testing the beam rifle named the sword in the lake. Definitely. Sir Knight. Now, other than the SL-01 sword in the lake beam rifle, all other equipment can be used normally. I see. Begin the simulation test. Understood. In the face of a decisive battle, Avalon and even Mithril had more work to do in preparation for them. It was night. Avalon, which was high up in the sky, was not affected by the cold of the high altitude. For the utopia that could make Avalon disappear from the sight of the world and had strong defensive capabilities, isolating the cold air from the high altitude was just a trivial matter. Outside was an endless sea of clouds that reflected the faint moonlight. Above was the bright light cast by the Milky Way that spanned the sky and existed since ancient times. Euphemia, who was strolling on the deck of Avalon, raised her head slightly to look at the night sky that was similar but different. She let out a soft sigh. UFFI, what are you thinking about? At this time, Kai's voice came from behind. UFFI turned around, shook her head slightly, and smiled. No, not thinking about anything. I'm just regretful about the academy life that has just started but has to be suspended. Although Euphemia's academy life in this world was very good, it came to an end after Reynold declared war. Neither Kai nor Fianna would agree to expose Euphemia to the enemy at this critical moment. Even if Reynold might not know Euphemia's identity, Kai did not dare to take the risk. In this regard, Euphemia just habitually agreed with Kai and Fianna's suggestion and returned to Avalon. It seems that it will take some time to return to the Array Generation High School. Although Euphemia did not say anything, there was a trace of regret in her tone. Speaking of which, it made sense. In this world, no one knew that Euphemia was Her Majesty the Queen of Britannia. Even if they knew, they would probably laugh and ask, "The Britannia Empire? Which country is there? Why haven't I heard of it?" In this state of almost isolating Euphemia's identity, Euphemia finally obtained a life similar to that of ordinary people. This might be the most comfortable day for Euphemia during this period of time. UFFI. Qin Yao may come here in a few days. Ray Minkai said something that surprised Euphemia. Qin Yao? She's coming here too? Yes. Although Mithril has begun to arrange for the transfer of the Whisperers they protect, the existence of Qin Yao is special. We don't dare to be careless about it. Therefore, the only thing we can do is to let Qin Yao come here and accept our protection. There was one thing that Ray Minkai did not tell Euphemia. That was the truth about Qin Yao being the key person to start Tartaros. In fact, since returning from that battle, Ray Minkai had been thinking about one thing. Why didn't Leonard immediately control Qin Yao after successfully resetting the world many times or even more? Isn't this the fastest and most convenient way? Moreover, according to Ray Minkai's memories, Whispers would not be affected by the reset world. How confused Ray Minkai was with the clues he had so far. If Whisperers were not affected by the reset world, then why was Leonard the only one who could bring about Ray Minkai's extremely strange and indescribable sense of space-time disorder? Qin Yao wanted it, but Teresa didn't? Puzzled, Ray Minkai inadvertently remembered what he had heard before he set off. In the space-time singularity, the people you are familiar with, and even the things you are familiar with will undergo unpredictable changes. If you still hold the original view of the world in the space-time singularity, I'm afraid you will suffer a calamity that you can't turn around. Along this line of thought, Ray Minkai thought of a movie he had seen before, The Butterfly Effect. It was a sci-fi thriller movie. It was about a boy who could go back to the past and change the future through old videotapes. However, no matter how the boy went back to the past and changed the future through old videotapes, the future he changed would always make the boy despair in unexpected circumstances. Once, he returned to the past again, constantly changed the future, and constantly fell into despair. After countless changes and despair, the boy finally collapsed. In the last choice to return to the past, the boy chose to kill himself as a fetus. Lei Minkai did not know if Reynold had experienced despair again and again like the boy in The Butterfly Effect. But what Lei Minkai was sure of now was that one of the effects of the unpredictability of the constantly resetting and modifying spacetime might be that Reynold had lost the ability to predict the key figures who could start Tartaros in advance. Therefore, it was necessary to protect Qin Yao as soon as possible. Chapter 416. Nansu, a city located in a tropical region, and also a city that was keen on AS wrestling. Under the promotion of interested people, AS teams with a considerable number of AS pilots gathered in this southern city. They used their own retired AS airframes that had been dragged back from the battlefield and modified to a considerable extent to carry out fierce wrestling matches. Therefore, in the visual impact of the steel collision of huge humanoid airframes, people from all over the world gathered here and bet everything they had in the collision of steel and blood. An unarmed RK-91 barbarian slowly walked along the street toward the huge arena in the middle of the street. When the huge greenish-black body passed through the street, it did attract the attention of many foreign tourists. Among them, a girl with a long pink ponytail looked in surprise at the passers-by who turned a blind eye to the barbarian strolling through the middle of the street. Are the people here used to AS swaggering on the street? Euphemia blinked and looked at the barbarian, gradually disappearing into the depths of the street. Maybe, after all, AS wrestling is one of the economic pillars of this city. It can be said that as long as AS wrestling is held for a day, the residents of this city can rely on as to eat their fill. Ray Minkai smiled and briefly mentioned the hot topic of this city. Is that so? Even so, it's still not a good thing. No matter how great the benefits brought by AS wrestling are, once it gets out of control, I'm afraid the city will be caught in the flames of war. Euphemia was keenly aware of the hidden dangers behind the AS wrestling competition that was in full swing. Yes, however, to be able to hold AS wrestling in this city is a manifestation of power in itself, whether it's capital or some hidden power. Ray Minkai's words made Euphemia smile. Then, the purpose of our visit this time is for those people. Yes. Now, Ray Minkai and Euphemia were in Nansu City in the Southern Kingdom. In this city, a series of popular AS wrestling matches were being held. Behind these popular AS wrestling matches, there was a hidden mastermind behind the scenes playing with the world amalgam. Therefore, the purpose of Ray Minkai and Euphemia coming to this southern city on the eve of the decisive battle was to launch an operation against amalgam. However, in this operation, there was an additional factor. Yes, Kai, it's rare to come to this city. Why don't we go for a walk? After looking at the lively street for a while, Euphemia reached out and picked up the white cat, Zero, who was sleeping on the table, and sent an invitation to Ray Minkai. Well, let's go for a walk. For Euphemia's proposal, Ray Minkai naturally would not refuse. After he cast a glance at the alley next to him, he walked on the street with Euphemia. When Ray Minkai and Euphemia left, there were several figures in the alley and disappeared in the alley. Nami, a girl born in this southern kingdom. In the Civil War 3 years ago, her small village was also razed to the ground in this civil war. The relatives she was familiar with, the villagers, and even the school she studied in when she was a child were all turned into ashes. In the face of the destruction of the village, but because of the fuel consumption, the RK-91 early-stage barbarian was abandoned in the ruins of the village. The girl's initial idea was to sell it and hide in the mountains, but in the end, she changed her mind. Now, the girl, who had changed her mind, was busy in this city where the AS wrestling matches were a selling point. Boss, can't this muscle bundle be cheaper? The ponytail with long orange hair fluttered slightly with the change in the girl's tone, and the pair of lively eyes also flashed with a pleading light at this moment. However, in the face of the young and pretty face, the boss, who had been dealing with AS parts for many years, did not relent because of this. Nami, you also know how difficult it is to get the original goods now. I don't know what's going on recently. The originally smooth supply channel suddenly closed a lot, so now I can't stock some parts. What I'm selling you now is my last stock. The boss crossed his hands in front of his chest, shook his head repeatedly, and continued to describe the difficulties he faced recently. Nami also knew the difficulties mentioned by the boss. Since Nami was determined to become the manager of the AS wrestling tournament, she had devoted all her energy to understand and control the AS wrestling tournament, which had become one of the city's economic pillars in just 2 or 3 years, as well as the knowledge related to it. Boss, I know what you said, but my team is going to participate in the competition next. Can you give me some discounts or something? Just once will do. Nami bit her lips, thinking hard about the budget she could use. In the end, no matter what Nami thought, the only way was to plead. In the face of Nami's pleading, although the boss was annoyed, he couldn't say anything. After all, Nami's performance since she entered the industry until now, the boss also saw it. Nami, you should stop before going too far. You can't maintain the operation of a team by yourself, even if your good luck allows you to pick up a barbarian. But it doesn't mean that you can win the competition in that arena. If you're not careful, you may lose your life. Since the beginning of the AS wrestling competition, the boss, who had been operating the business of selling AS parts, naturally knew more than Nami. The teams that could win in the AS wrestling competition were all strong and had a strong background supporting them. A girl like Nami, who was only hot-blooded and lucky enough to pick up a barbarian that was still in good condition, couldn't survive in that arena. No, I still have things to do. Moreover, it's something that must be done by winning this competition. Facing the boss's dissuasion, Nami was extremely unyielding and unmoved. But this unyielding attitude didn't last for more than 3 seconds. Under the boss's attitude of refusing to bargain, it instantly softened and turned into a pleading expression again. Just when the boss's annoyance was about to reach its limit, the doorbell suddenly rang. "There's a guest. Nami, you stand aside for me. Don't hinder my business." Finally able to get rid of Nami's entanglement, the boss hurriedly walked to the door to welcome the guest. Little did he know that the moment the boss came to the door, he was stunned. "Are you the boss here? I have something to ask you. Is that okay?" Gentle voice, amiable smile, noble and dignified temperament, and other words that could describe a beautiful woman constantly flashed through the boss's mind at this moment, making the boss, who was good at business, almost unable to react. Yes, I'm the boss here. Please may I ask?" The boss nodded his head repeatedly and revealed a brilliant smile. Even if the woman in front of him, who was emitting a noble temperament, didn't clearly state her purpose of coming, the boss wouldn't have any opinion about it. Because, as long as one wasn't blind, one would be able to see that the woman in front of him wasn't an ordinary person. If he could serve her today, no, even a month's worth of sales would be in his hands. "Do you sell AS parts here?" The noble girl with pink long hair looked around and pointed at the various parts that were neatly arranged on the display cabinet and asked, "Yes, AS parts are the main goods that we sell in this shop. May I ask this, miss, is there anything that I can help you with?" Hearing the girl in front of him take the initiative to ask about AS parts, the boss's smile became even more brilliant. Let me take a look first." The girl nodded her head and immediately turned her head and asked, "Kai, what do you think?" At this moment, the boss discovered that beside the girl stood a young man with an outstanding temperament, but faintly made the boss feel a trace of danger. "Mo, could it be that he is an AS pilot?" When the boss saw the young man, he immediately thought subconsciously, this place is okay." The young man nodded his head, gave a conservative evaluation, and walked towards the shop. Seeing this, the boss naturally followed suit. This time, the boss thought that he had already seen clearly. The real customer was probably the young man, and that noble young lady was probably in charge of paying the bill, right? Why the boss, who was muttering in his heart, was thinking about how to serve this pair of guests well. This seems to be a muscle bundle." Suddenly, the young man pointed at the muscle bundle that was placed on the table, which was already half unwrapped, and asked, "Oh no." Seeing the muscle bundle, the boss immediately knew that something was wrong. Because he was in a hurry just now, and because of the arrival of the guests, the boss forgot to retract the muscle bundle, resulting in the young man seeing it. Yes, mister. This is the muscle bundle that the RK-91 Barbarian uses in its initial stage. This is the original muscle bundle produced by the factory. It is considered rare in the market now. The boss, who didn't change his expression, hurriedly walked to the side of the muscle bundle with a smile and explained to the guests. "Original product? There are a lot of barbarians in this city. Boss, your business here seems to be booming." The young man raised his eyebrows and talked about the barbarians he saw on the street just now. Yes. Thanks to them, we can make a living here." The boss, who nodded and smiled apologetically, couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He didn't know why. This seemed to be just an ordinary business exchange, but made the boss feel a little pressure. Wait. At this time, a voice unexpectedly sounded. "This is what I ordered first. Sorry, it's not for sale." Nami. When he heard that voice, the boss suddenly became angry. "Boss, this part, I want it. I'll give you half of the money first. After we win this game, I'll pay you the rest. How about that?" Nami's eyes flashed with a determined light, but there was still a trace of pleading in the depths of her eyes. "Nami, that's enough. Can you guarantee that you can win the next game? With that half-baked team of yours?" The boss, who was worried about how to receive the guests, finally got angry after Nami's disturbance. "Boss, I've put down the deposit for this part early in the morning. Now I just can't pay the price for the time being." Just now, when Nami was thinking about how to pay for the muscle bundle and the limited budget, she unexpectedly found that the young man seemed to be very interested in the muscle bundle. Needless to say, compared to him, who was cash-strapped, the boss would definitely choose to sell the muscle bundles to the couple who looked like they were rich. At that time, the Nami team, which was about to start the next AS wrestling competition, would fail miserably before they could even touch the competition ground because of the lack of spare parts. Therefore, in a hurry, Nami made up her mind and loudly announced the ownership of the muscle bundle. Kai, we seem to have embarrassed them. Looking at the two people who were in a dispute, the noble girl gently pulled the young man's clothes. Well, what a coincidence. The young man nodded slightly, with a wry smile at the corner of his mouth. He didn't expect that his impulsive inquiry would lead to a quarrel about the muscle bundle. UFFI, it seems that we have to apologize to them. Well, that's the only way. Otherwise, it's not good for anyone to continue arguing. Clap, clap. Two claps interrupted the argument between the boss and Nami, which was getting more and more like a quarrel. Then, the young man took out a card from his pocket and handed it to the boss. Boss, I want this muscle bundle. Can I swipe my card here? Oh, yes. You can swipe your card. Please wait a moment. The boss, who didn't react for a while, saw the credit card in the young man's hand. His eyes suddenly lit up, and he quickly opened the drawer, respectfully took the credit card from the young man, and prepared to pay the bill. Boss, how can you do this? Nami saw the boss actually resell the muscle bundle to the man and woman, and her voice suddenly became hoarse. Ahem, miss, please don't be sad. If you can fulfill a wish for us, we will give you this muscle bundle as a return gift. The young man's words made Nami stunned. She, who had no chance with the muscle bundle, didn't expect that there would be such a thing. Then, Nami, who was afraid of missing out on the muscle bundle, quickly asked, I don't know what your wish is. Before she finished, Nami continued, I have to say in advance, I'm just an ordinary girl. There are not many things I can do. Nami's words made the noble girl shook her head slightly. With a gentle and moving smile on her mouth, she slowly said, No, you misunderstood. We are just tourists who came to this city because of its fame. So, we only have one wish. That is to be able to enter the arena and watch the AS wrestling match up close. That's it. Nami couldn't believe her ears. For ordinary people, it may be difficult to enter the arena. But for this man and woman, who were obviously not ordinary people, it was nothing. Why did they have to find her? Nami's brain turned, but she couldn't think of a reason. In the end, in the face of the temptation of being able to get the muscle bundle for free and thus liberating her limited budget, Nami nodded and agreed to this condition. Then, I'll leave the rest of the trip to you. Also, I'm Ray Minkai, and this is my girlfriend, UFFI. I'm Nami, and I'm also an AS wrestling agent. You found the right person this time. I'll make sure you can watch the AS wrestling match from the perfect seat. Chapter 417. Zhao, a man with only one word in his name. No one knew what his full name was, because he himself didn't know what his full name was. From the moment he was born, his name was only this word. Until the end of the civil war that took the lives of countless people 3 years ago, Zhao, who was like a wild dog, finally ushered in the opportunity to break free from the chains that had firmly trapped him at the bottom of society since he was a child. It was an inconspicuous piece of paper, but it represented a lot of money. It could even attract those rich people from all over the world. It was the ticket that brought Zhao Qi back from the dead. From a stray dog at the bottom of society, he became a respectable person in the eyes of many citizens. Zhao, you're here again. How's your harvest today? This was a dealer who sold arena tickets. When he saw the man who was still exuding a rough aura, even though he was wearing an expensive suit, he waved his hand and shouted, TSK, Baku, are you looking for a beating again? Zhao spat out the toothpick in his mouth and glared at the other party as he shouted in a gruff voice. This fellow in front of him was originally Zhao's sworn enemy. If it weren't for this fellow's existence, Zhao would probably be able to monopolize the business of the arena's dealers. No, don't be like this. Zhao, today I have a big business to introduce to you. Faced with Zhao's threat, Baku shook his head and waved his hand. After indicating that he had no ill intentions, he walked to Zhao's side and lowered his voice. Zhao, I've never had any thoughts of going against you. I'm just trying to make a living. Besides, I know where my abilities lie. However, these words that were close to begging for mercy were interrupted by Zhao's slap. Baku, don't give me this nonsense. Speak. What do you want to do today? Baku, who was slapped by Zhao, was not angry. Instead, he smiled embarrassedly. Don't. Boss Zhao, I know what you're capable of. So, I'll introduce you to the guests I met today. Guests? Zhao frowned slightly when he heard this, and a trace of distrust appeared on his face. Yes, guests. Baku nodded repeatedly, his voice lowered even further, afraid that a third person would hear him. Boss Zhao, that was a big fish. Although I really want to monopolize it, I don't know many AS wrestling teams. AS wrestling team. Upon hearing this name, Zhao's eyes lit up. Obviously, he had already guessed what Baku wanted to say next. In this city, where AS wrestling dominated the mainstream entertainment, there were only 3 kinds of people who could inquire about the AS wrestling team. The first type was a delusional dreamer who wanted to invest all his fortune in an AS wrestling team in an attempt to soar into the sky. The second kind were speculators like him who wanted to use the fame of some famous AS wrestling teams to inflate the ticket prices in order to make huge profits. As for the last type, they would be extremely wealthy. They would want to spend countless amounts of money on the AS wrestling team and make them their own team so that they could profit from it. Therefore, the big fish referred to in Baku's words was undoubtedly the last one. Zhao, whose thoughts became clearer, looked up and down at Baku and slowly nodded. Speak. I'm listening. Yes. Baku rubbed his hands. This was a small gesture unique to this guy when he was bargaining. 5,000. Zhao's expression did not change as he quoted a price. 20,000. Baku directly returned 4 times the price. 10,000. Zhao cut half of it without blinking. 9,000. Baku gritted his teeth. Obviously, he wanted to bite to death at this price. However, Zhao only raised his eyes slightly. 8,000. Goodbye if there's more. I'm busy. A trace of struggle appeared on Baku's face as he gritted his teeth. In the end, he nodded his head forcefully. Deal. Zhao reached into his bosom and took out a stack of banknotes. He threw it to Baku without looking at it. This is yours. Speak. Baku hurriedly caught the banknotes thrown by Zhao and pointed at the car, not far away. Zhao glanced at it and left Baku behind. He walked to the side of the car and gently knocked on the windshield of the car. However, what Zhao did not expect was that as the windshield of the driver's seat fell, what appeared in front of him was a cold and elegant face that was like a flower on a mountain. Woman? What a beautiful woman. With this thought in mind, Zhao, who believed that his eyesight was better than others, judged that the woman in the driver's seat should be the daughter of a rich family's daughter who liked to play with exciting things. What a big fish. Needless to say, Zhao, who was used to such things in the arena, immediately began to calculate how much benefit he could obtain from this rich girl. While he was thinking, the scene of him throwing money at his face appeared once again. However, this time, it was Zhao himself who was thrown in the face by the money. In front of him was the colorful banknotes that filled the sky. His face was in pain for being slapped in the face by stacks of banknotes. What sounded in his ears was the cold and emotionless voice of a young girl. Take me to see the AS wrestling team in this city. If there's a team that you like, this money is yours. No nonsense. No questions. He straightforwardly stated his purpose. And the stacks of banknotes that were slapped in the face. All of this made Zhao throw away his unnecessary suspicions and wholeheartedly serve this, or rather, this pair of twin beauties who had identical faces as customers. 2 distinguished guests, please follow me. I'll lead the way for you now. An hour later, Zhao, who was full of smiles, brought the twin ice beauties to a VIP room in the arena and pointed at the 2 teams that were fighting on the field. However, just when Zhao Man thought that with his outstanding eloquence, the twin ice sisters would definitely nod their heads and agree to the team he introduced, they were rejected by the Ice Mountain girl who should be the younger sister. No, too weak. All right, if this doesn't work, then the next one. Zhao, who felt that he was already well informed, did not mind and began to introduce the next team. In the end, no, too weak. Yeah, then please take a look at this team. They're an old team that has experience close to 100 wrestling matches. Too weak. Yeah, then please take a look at this team. They're too weak. The ice-cold face and dull voice interrupted Zhao's bragging time and time again, almost causing Zhao to fall into the situation of a volcanic eruption. If not for the pain from being slapped by the stacks of banknotes still lingering on Zhao's face, Zhao might have turned hostile on the spot. Just take it as if it is for the sake of money. Zhao, who was secretly cheering himself on so that he could properly serve the twin ice beauties that were difficult to deal with, suddenly, his eyes lit up. Two distinguished guests. Quickly look. This is the most famous team in our arena. Their pilot's name is called Tao. Tao. Zhao, who was bragging, did not realize that when he announced the name of the team that was going to fight, the twin sisters who had been denying Zhao's bragging all along moved. Tao. Yufeng, is that him? The person that Lord was talking about. The short-haired young girl asked in a low voice. I'm afraid that is him. The pain on the body and the characteristics are all the same as what Lord said. The long-haired young girl slowly nodded her head. Then, after taking a look at each other, the twins simultaneously looked at Zhao, who was still bragging. Although the twins' gaze did not have any killing intent, the coldness that was unable to dissipate caused Zhao to involuntarily shiver. Two distinguished guests, do you need anything? Zhao, who was afraid that his bragging would offend the twins, laughed mockingly. It is him. Tao, we want his team. It was still a straightforward method. Zhao's face was once again slapped by the stacks of banknotes until it hurt. However, at this moment, Zhao's heart was actually jumping for joy. Business done. What? Tao's team withdrew from this competition? At a corner of the arena, Nami's shocked voice that could not be concealed lingered above Neku for a long time. Nami, isn't this good? Although I don't know why Tao withdrew from the competition, at least our preparation time has been freed, right? The fat man with a red headscarf and a mustache spread out his hands, indicating that he was very happy with this sudden situation. Riley. Although that is what you said, but Nami frowned. All right, little boss. This time our luck is not bad. How about, let's go have a drink to celebrate. The AS pilot, who was also Lick, could not stop talking about his favorite, wine. Lick, you better stop for a moment. Right now, I have an important announcement to make. Our team has welcomed a big financial backer. What? Once Nami's announcement was made, everyone was shocked. The team, which was already in a terrible fix due to the limited budget, suddenly welcomed a big financial backer. If this news were to be announced, most probably no one would believe it. Moreover, no matter how much Nami bragged about her team, there was no way to change the fact that her team was still in the middle level of the arena. You don't believe me? Then, I will introduce the big financial backer to you. Nami looked at her team members who all revealed a distrustful expression and immediately became excited. The next moment, the big financial backer who had been waiting outside and did not intend to disturb Nami's team was invited in by Nami. Please look, this is Ray Minkai, and this is UFFI. They came to Nanshe City today and coincidentally met with me. During the conversation with me, they also nodded and acknowledged our strength and proposed to provide us with funds. So, quickly come and meet our big financial backer. With someone as a witness, Nami was in the limelight in front of her team members. After the liveliness, the man and woman retreated to the other side, looking at the team members who were completely ignited with enthusiasm and started to work on the old barbarian. Kai, do you really intend to support this team? The girl's pretty face had a doubtful expression. Their purpose in coming to this southern city was not just to play, but to search for Amalgam's stronghold in this country and remove it, so as to prevent Mithril's stronghold in the South Pacific from being attacked. Yes, there is nothing wrong with this. Moreover, my goal is not this team, but her. The young man nodded slightly, raised his hand, and pointed to Nami, who was concentrating on typing on the keyboard. According to my speculation, Nami may be one of Myra's members. Oh, Kai, do you want to take her back? Hearing the young man's idea, the girl did not seem to have any jealousy. Yes, perhaps Nami's field of expertise is programming, and she may complement Mira. The young man, Ray Minkai, smiled and said his thoughts aloud. But we don't know if Nami will agree to help us. Kai, could it be that you're already confident? The girl frowned and looked at Nami, who was concentrating on her work. It was not difficult to see that Nami has devoted her mind to the barbarian system maintenance. Maybe I'm a little bit sure. Ray Minkai carefully searched in his mind and remembered the memory of Nami. Lack of money. Want to rebuild the village. He even wants to rebuild the school that brought Nami beautiful memories in his memory. It was not difficult for Ray Minkai to come up with such an idea. As long as Ray Minkai told Mithril, the village and school would naturally be rebuilt in a short time. However, before the threat posed by Leonard and Amalgam was solved, these actions were meaningless. Even Nami's own life could not be guaranteed. Even if there was no possibility of Xiang Liang Sosuke and Nami having contact, Nami's identity as a whisper was a time bomb that could explode at any time. Globally, more and more whispers were discovered, and the result was an increase in the production of black technology products and the cheapness of them. Also, under the stimulation of the huge profits brought by black technology products, capital, organizations, and even countries would crazily pursue the existence of whispers around the world. Therefore, Nami's situation would become more and more serious and dangerous. Although it seemed a bit shameless to say this. But finding a way to bring Nami back to Avalon was indeed a good way to keep Nami away from the vortex of whispers. Money. Sitting on the throne, the girl who had been in power for a long time thought carefully and immediately thought of Ray Minkai's idea. Indeed, from the first time she saw Nami, this little girl had always been competing with money. She constantly used all kinds of methods to get everything she wanted. She wanted to use the limited budget she could control to obtain greater benefits. In other words, Nami might be a money grubber. The best way to deal with a money grubber was undoubtedly one word: money. For this, the girl, the Empress of the Britannia Empire, Euphemia Libertania, did not seem to be lacking in this regard. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.